All right, go.
In 5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it.
In 5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. And we will leave you with a... I can't do it. We'll do it live.
Okay. Go.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks again for watching. We'll leave you with Sting and a cut off his new album. Take it away.
Fireside Chats.
What is up, everybody? It is your boy Lou Martinez, aka Big Chief Burrito, live with you on a Thursday. Fireside Chats with Big Chief Burrito, coming at you live from Chula Vista, California, the Burrito Lounge. Hope everybody's having a good start to their summer. The heat wave in California, San Diego, LA is fierce. So we're trying to start our pods probably a little bit later in the days. These time moving forward for the summer. Hope you guys are going to get out to the beach. Hope everybody's getting vaccinated. California is opening again. Lots of good stuff happening. And today our topic and our subject will be the industry, which is something that I talk to a lot with different people, filmmakers, actors, comedians, friends of mine, local and abroad and all over across the world. Yesterday, 2 days ago, we talked to Julian from the Naciona podcast. We talked about colonialism. We talked about a bunch of real heavy stuff for 2.5 hours. And today we're going to touch on a little bit of that, but mostly I wanted to talk to somebody that I've seen and met through Twitter that seemed to have a real interesting take and feel on the industry in terms of what the real expectations should be for people as they begin this process of becoming either a filmmaker, a writer, a producer. Should we reset those expectations into what you should kind of expect when you go into that industry? Should you kind of look for things that are peripheral to the industry, but not necessarily at the top of the food chain? And about a bunch of other series of things that are happening in the world right now. So I wanted to welcome onto the podcast and stream Lydia Monaco.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, creator of a movie that I just saw today called Lola, right?
Yeah, Lola. Thank you.
Lola. Okay, thank you. And big fan of your ability to stir shit up on the interwebs.
I know. Isn't it interesting when the brown Mexican American woman says something? I actually took a screenshot of me saying the same exact thing on a Instagram post, and then somebody else said it, and they were white. Same exact thing. And they were fine. And then somebody else said the same exact thing, and they were black, and they were fine. And I'm like, it's really interesting how brown women are treated and what the expectation is in terms of what to say, what not to say, when to keep our mouth shut. So it's a little bit of that, like, no hables hasta que te digan que hables, siéntate ahí bonita y ser niña bonita, calladita, te ves mejor, más bonita. Like all that stuff that they teach us even in Mexico. or here in Latin America, possibly, and here in the US. It's quite interesting how that actually happens also on social media.
Were you originally from Mexico, or were you born here, or what did you start?
Really good question. I was actually born in the San Fernando Valley here in California. And before the age of 9, my family, we moved to Mexico. We lived out there for 5 years. Prior to that and after that, we spent 4 months out of the year in Mexico. We had a house and traveled all over Mexico. So I went to school out there. I was actually going to stay and continue my education. And then when I finished high school here and I was looking for colleges, I was actually going to go to La Autónoma de Guadalajara. We had already made arrangements for me to go out there, and then I changed my mind last minute. So I still have family there. My mom, I say this on Twitter all the time, she's a white Latina and comes with all the baggage that comes with actually being a white Latina. And her family immigrated to Mexico from Europe. And it wasn't like hundreds of years ago. It was like literally 1800s, late 1800s. So it's super recent. Like it was her great grandfather, I think, that immigrated, or that side of the family. And then my dad, again, share it on social media all the time. I didn't know what he was because he was poor. He was from Michoacan. He's now deceased. He's been deceased for 15 years. And my grandparents are deceased. Nobody knows anything. So there was always that question mark of what am I? I assumed I was indigenous because, my family's from Mexico. So I assumed, but I did the DNA test, and the little thing that I knew that my grandmother was tracked Jewish customs, even though she's Catholic. So there was some Jewishness somewhere in there. And I knew that we were Arabic, and I knew that's it. And I knew that we had curly hair and we had broad noses, and we were, some people say I'm white and some people say I'm not. But in my mom's family, since they are white, I'm considered brown, or I'm considered dark, or I'm considered indigenous. So, or indigenous looking, or ethnic looking, or, black looking, or whatever you want to call it, even though other people may say like, but you're not really dark. And I'm like, but for my family, this is dark.
Right.
So, so it's a very simple but yet complicated thing. And I think a lot of us that are Latino are grappling with that. Like, what are we? Like that simple answer of like, well, technically, but then also comes to mind. So.
Well, I think a lot of it, and there's stuff brought, what was the whole Alec Baldwin thing with his wife was like, saying she was playing Latina. She didn't know how you say cucumber, or whatever it was.
What was so problematic about that is that she vacationed, I think, in Spain for like a few years, maybe, or she went occasionally. She really liked the culture, and that goes back
to culture. I think I'll take it.
Yeah, but which is hilarious, right? If you think about it. And I posted about this today because I was on a previous Zoom where a woman who literally said, I was born in the U.S., I was an anchor baby, and then I was taken to Mexico. I was raised in Mexico, and I didn't come back until I was 18. Well, Lord, child, you're Mexican and you're a Mexican immigrant. But she's like, but I feel Mexican American, and I'm not a police officer of telling you how you should represent yourself. But when you say you're Mexican American, it comes with a whole lot of baggage that, somebody that showed up when they were 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, it's not the same as being born here, growing up here. Just as it's not the same for me to move to Mexico for a few years and then suddenly claim I'm Mexican. I'm like, I'm not Mexican. I'm Mexican American. So I think more of that is going to be happening, especially since In the Heights just came out this weekend. So the reckoning with the fact that Latinidad, and I've said this I think in every single interview that I've ever done, is that Latinidad is no longer a qualifier for us, because if you're from Italy or from Switzerland or from France, people will say you're from Italy, Switzerland, or France. They will never say you're European. Right. Versus Latin Americans, they try to lump us into this one little barrel, and now that everybody has a microphone where you could talk about it and say like, no, that's not the case. We're not all the same, and that's okay. Specificity matters.
The like I said, you ask a white person and they'll say, well, I'm 3/4 Irish, but there's German and then French and this and that, and then they ask me like, what part of Mexico are you from? And I'll be like, well,
right.
no,
and
I say like I'm Colombian, and they're like, well, what part of Mexico is that? I'm like, well,
I know it's so hilarious how they do that, and how we're not allowed to specify where our family is from, or the fact that if I bring up, because for the longest time I just said I was Latina, and my parents are from Mexico. I'm Mexican American. And the reason I did is to simplify it for people, right? Because I knew that people weren't ready to hear. But, the story is my mom's family immigrated to Mexico. And my dad, I have no idea what he is. So I cannot claim indigenidad because that's taking a culture that is not mine. And I don't feel, it doesn't feel honorable to do that. So thankfully now more people are speaking out. They're describing what their background is. They're incorporating that into their art. I mean, as you can see, all of my work. Well, you haven't seen all of my work, but my last film, you will see like it's not what you're stereotypically assumed that a Latina film would be. And I think it's because my life is very bicultural, biracial. I've traveled. I lived in 2 countries. I lived in a very white environment, like in the Heights. One of the characters is like, I missed, I couldn't be in college because I missed my community. There wasn't the abuelitas in the community that would take care of me. And I'm like, I don't know what that's like. Because even in Mexico, I lived in a white environment. Which is whitest state the whitest city in the whitest state in Mexico, and all my family is on my mom's side is white. So I don't know what it's like to have that community embracing you, and supporting you, and that was said in that movie. So that is obviously something that needs to be shown, but that's not everybody's reality.
Yeah, that's a very idealized Broadway-esque interpretation of what the culture is in Washington Heights. I mean, I grew up in Jackson Heights, which is in Queens. It's the Queens equivalent. Replace the Puerto Ricans and the Dominicans with Colombians and Mexicans, and you got Jackson Heights, as opposed to Washington Heights. Every culture, every Latino culture in the world has their own neighborhood in New York. So
I know, I hear about that. I'm like, oh my God, I would have loved to grow up like that. I don't know what it's like. So that to me is really, really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Since we're on the topic of it, and it is something that I kind of thought about when I was kind of researching you a little bit and was looking some of your posts, because I think it's kind of like there's a conversation there to be had about whether dividing Native Mexican culture and Mexican American culture and Chicano culture into its own separate groups is, like I could say, well, I'm a Colombian, like I said, I'm also a mixed, and I traveled a lot. I moved all across South America. I moved all across the U.S. I lived in Colombia. My father is from Uruguay. My mom is from Colombia. I was born in Colombia, but I
very cool.
But I grew up in New York and Queens in very mixed environment. And now I live in San Diego for the last 20 years, submerged and just there's nothing but Mexican people in my life now, right?
Welcome to the family.
So here's an interesting point, which is I had a thought experiment the other day. I was updating my Twitter profile, and I put my little Colombian flag and I put my little Uruguayan flag. And I was for a second, I was like, could I add a Mexican flag there? Now, I'm not at all Mexican, right? I lived in New York. I'm dating a Mexican girl. My company is called 2 a.m. Burrito, which is because it's a uniquely San Diego thing. When you're out at 2 in the morning, you get a burrito in San Diego.
You get a burrito, not a hot dog.
Yeah, not a hot dog. In New York, it's Texas. It's pizza. In LA, it might be hot dogs or whatever.
Bacon wrap hot dogs, baby. Bacon wrap hot dogs.
In TJ, it's tacos or hot dogs. Again, bacon wrap hot dogs. But San Diego, it's a 2 a.m. burrito. And like I said, the majority of the women and the people in my movies are all Mexican. My production team is all Mexican, like, and stuff like that. And I was like, I think this is what the people that appropriate something think. I've been living in San Diego for 20 years. I'm surrounded by nothing but Mexican. I'm helping raise a Mexican kid, like all these things, but I'm still not Mexican. I love the
Right.
culture. You can say, hey, no mames way. Like when I'm with my Colombians,
Thank you.
my Colombian accent comes out. When I'm talking with my Uruguayan friends, my Uruguayan accent comes out. I moved all over the world. I appreciate the culture. I love
Right.
living in San Diego. I'm surrounded by it all the time. People that know me never even think that I'm not Mexican, unless they see the tattoos or they get to know me a little bit.
Right.
And my friends all love me, but at the end of the day, they know Luis is Colombian. Like I said, that's not like they don't let me forget it. They don't care, but it's still there. So I had that thought experiment. Is like, I think this is the moment that I'm having right now where people say, I was raised by a Colombian father, even though I'm white, and I'm gonna, and I'm gonna just say, and I'm gonna claim it. I'm gonna claim it. But obviously we understand now that that's. But so I didn't do it. Obviously,
it's not okay. And there is a lot of people that I know that will say, "Well, I grew up around Mexicans. I grew up around Puerto Ricans, or I moved to Puerto Rico, or I moved to Mexico." I moved to Mexico and I don't claim being Mexican. Like somebody tried to tell me, well, you're Mexican. I'm like, my parents are Mexican. I'm Mexican American. There's a huge difference. Huge. Like, yeah, like, like obviously, my parents aren't going to actually, you know what? Never mind. My dad, once I tried to tell somebody I was Mexican and he looked at me. He's like, you're not, you're Mexican. When he was alive. He's like, because culture is unique. When you're a child of immigrants, I call it third culture. And I do have that on my profile. And actually, it is a thing. Like I found it in some article that I read, that there's a distinct third culture that is made by kids of immigrants. Whether you're Chinese, whether you're Mexican, Colombian, from any country in the world, but specifically from countries that are oppressed by colonialism, we create a different culture here in the U.S., which is called third culture. So you can find it, people can look it up. But if one of my good friends that I worked with on the Vice project that I did, she's from, oh my God, she lived in Saudi Arabia, but she's not Saudi Arabia. She's Senegalese, I want to say. So when her and I were talking about her family and what they did, we had more in common than talking to somebody that immigrates from Mexico when they're 18 or 19. It's wild. So I'll invite any of your viewers or listeners to have a conversation with a child of immigrants of any country. Yeah, there'll be specific differences in terms of the food or whatnot, but if the way your parents treat you, your expectation, the way you handle the world, it's almost, I don't want to say identical, but it's very, 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 very close.
Yeah, there's I real what our similarities go across skin color and DNA. An example is I had a conversation with a makeup artist who's also Coda. She's a children of death of both her parents were deaf. So and you wouldn't think that she's white European, and I had her on to talk about a bunch of stuff, but also because she tries to teach people sign language and things like that, which I thought was awesome. And we connected in the fact that when I was my father didn't speak a lick of English when we lived in New York in the 80s and early 90s, and I had to go and translate for him everywhere I went. And she had that same experience where she had to translate for her deaf parents. She had to grow up quicker because there was a language barrier between her parents and the real world, and for anything at school.
It's exhausting. It's so
on.
Exhausting to be the daughter or the son of a child of immigrants that cannot speak English, because you are translating, you're doing work, and this is regardless of the socioeconomic level of the parents. Because somebody said, oh, this happens because the family's poor, and I'm like, no, This happens because your parents don't know the language and they don't know the system, or at a certain level, they also make you grow up a little bit quicker. I don't know if you noticed that, like children of immigrants are shown responsibility a lot quicker. So my patience with people that act dingbat on social media, like, I don't know how to check my oil, or the oil changes light is on and I haven't changed my oil. And I'm like, oh my God, that gives me anxiety. Like, even if you don't know how to change the oil, you're responsible enough to go get that oil changed because you know your car is going to die. And that's not okay, whether or not your parents have money. It's you don't want to give that extra burden to anyone else. So that's something that's distinctly children of immigrants.
Yeah, and then and like I said, and we made a connection because as a child of a deaf adults, she had a very similar experience. So like you said, it's not necessarily that we would connect on something like that, but we both had that same having to translate, having to grow up quicker, having to make a decision in the moment, like, because my dad would say, tell him to go fuck off, and that he, and then blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, oh, he says we'll come back Tuesday. And I would be like, yeah. He's like, yeah.
Like, I don't want to talk to them on the phone, and you come up with these excuses. You're like, you're on the fly. You think differently. You think quicker. It's different. It's very, very different. Like, there's a very blasé way of being when you're Mexican, because you grow up around people that are just like you. You grow up around a homogeneous society, other than obviously there's colorism and obviously there's social class and there's money issues. But in general, there's this level of like, que no la frieguen mexicanos, and because you're right at the border, there's like this whole like this really cool attitude, like no mames is something they say all the time. It's such a thing. And the first time I heard, I was like, my God, I'd never say that ever in a million years. But that is a distinctly very Mexican way of being, which is cool, but it's different than being Mexican American.
One of the things that me and Sofia Carrillo, who the actress I told you about earlier, we have she co-hosts with me sometimes, and we have an advice segment where we get people to give us advice with no names and stuff, like just blind stuff where we can give people advice, and it's called No Names Way. So.
It's really funny because I'm telling you, like, the first time I heard it, I was so offended. I was like, do you understand what that means? Like, I know Spanish, but it's like saying F it, but they say F it all the time. In every setting, they say F it it's crazy. And, there's a certain level of almost like shyness that you're instilled when you're a kid of immigrants. So I think that's why I stand out more on social media, because I'm not shy,
right?
And I check people. Now, not to say I'm not shy in person, in the sense that I'm pretty quiet. Everybody knows that I don't like big gatherings. I'm actually like, I get anxiety from going to big events. So in general, I don't like that like bigness, which is very weird because like my following grew exponentially. The more I was honest with who I was, the more authentic I was, the more I, called people on stuff like, don't call yourself Mexican American if you're Mexican. You don't know what that means. It's not just moving back to the US. If you think of it as that, then you obviously don't know. Do you think
that I don't mean to cut you off, but do you think that extends, for example, to, because I think part of that conversation goes again, like, okay, is it better to have the two distinct cultures and just sort of define that this is the Mexican American culture and this is the Mexican or, people that originated or immigrated but spent most of their time in Mexico culture? Right. And does that apply to, for example, the praise that's giving like, Mexican filmmakers and directors are like, well, Mexicans have won Oscars. Well, no, not Mexican American, Mexican directors have won Oscars.
Right,
and their life and their product and their workflow does not necessarily involve a ton of Mexican American or Latin American people in their projects. They're more prone
they don't include any.
They're more prone to work
period.
with Europeans and other people or other Mexican
Right.
born filmmakers.
Right.
So it's almost like, yeah, I've seen some Mexican directors win an Oscar, but I haven't seen a Mexican American director win an Oscar or a Latino American
Are
director.
you ready for this conversation? Are you ready? Is your audience ready?
I'm absolutely ready.
The Mexican directors that have won, number one, they're all friends. Number two, they're white Mexican with a lot of money. They run the same circles. Most of the people in Mexico that get funded or they get money from the government, which the U.S. does not do, by the way, and that is why the production value of, even like straight out of film school films in Mexico the quality is much higher. It's because the government helps out. In the US, we're on our own. That's why you see so many people crowdfunding, or you see people that have money and they're able to do it. Like even going to film school here, I was the only Mexican American woman. I was the only Mexican American period in the program in California, in LA, which is wild if you think about it, right? And Mexico is an entirely different thing. You are running with the same people. Money begets money. Someone with money, whether you're Mexican, you're Chinese, you're from France, it doesn't matter. You all know each other. I know because I have family that's in that world, and they all know each other. So of course they're all going to support each other. Then it comes to, let's say, Roma as an example, which, by the way, I was not a fan of. I thought the cinematography was great, but if you see Gabriel Figueroa, it doesn't even hold a candle to Gabriel Figueroa. So why was this film doing so well? And it comes down to, it premiered at Tribeca, if I remember correctly. And people in that circle of money started talking about it and spread. If your friends, somebody close to you says this is a good film, the likelihood of you going to see it and saying that it's also a good film because your friend said it's a good film is actually high. By the time it came to other markets, it had a huge buzz, huge following. And to the credit of Yalitza, who was obviously not an actress, and she was able to, I don't want to say wing it, but really bring out what the director wanted in that role, it is quite high. Is quite high because in Mexico, the Mexican actresses were actually using horrible descriptors against Yalitza. Horrible descriptors because she was not an actress, she's not trained, es una India. All these things were said.
Yeah, basically, they were saying that she wasn't acting and she was just playing herself. I'm like, do you realize how hard it is to get on camera and play yourself, even if you are that? There's no such thing as faking it in front of the camera. You either have that skill or you don't.
Well, and this is what people simplify it and say, oh, it's because Mexico is so anti-indigenous people. But it's not just that. That is part of it, but it's not just that. Yalitza got out of a world where she should have stayed according to the elite in Mexico. She is a brown woman. She's an indigenous woman. She doesn't come from money. She doesn't come from this highly educated society. She doesn't have anyone que la padrinó, which basically means anyone that sponsored her. And I don't know that anyone wanted her to go beyond that film. And the people that are doing more for her are actually, believe it or not, the Latin Americans here in the U.S. You do not see that, or the Mexican Americans here in the U.S. You don't see that kind of support in Mexico for somebody indigenous, ever.
Absolutely,
ever. And if you can compare. The good thing is that all this stuff is now public. So if I ever say something that goes out of line or it's not fact, people can call me on it. But this is all public information. You can do some quick little queries. There's several articles about that. And basically here in the U.S., I think that we shot ourselves in the foot with some people that made it to the industry, made it to the ranks by changing their last name, by not claiming that they were Mexican Americans. So more people could actually believe that Mexican Americans come in all sizes and all colors, that aren't just from East LA, that aren't just poor, that don't just come from, poverty or their parents were gang members. All these are valid stories, but the problem is we only show this one story. This is what everybody believes. And we did this, or the powers that the people that got into the system have done it. And now we're paying the price for it. And now we're at a point where we're at a reckoning that people have megaphones. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. I personally, on In the Heights, I would have stayed quiet a little bit longer, not to appease African Americans, not to appease, or quiet Afro Latinos, but just to let In the Heights have its moment. And the grandiosity of the fact that we had so many Latinos there. We had, such amazing cinematography. I mean, the dance scene at the side of the wall and the lighting on that was beyond beautiful. Can't say shit about the acting. Cannot say anything about the directing. There's nothing that you can say other than, I wish there would have been more Afro-Latinos, because Washington Heights is predominantly Afro-Latinos, and this was a chance. But what people don't understand is, we don't know what concessions were made in order to make this film. And Lin-Manuel Miranda added some of his friends, right? So maybe, and I'm throwing it out there, is a producer said, okay, fine, bring your friends, but guess what? We get these other 10 actors. We get to choose these other 10 people since you're bringing these 10 people. So what could Lin-Manuel Miranda do then? He had to shut his mouth. And he got, but he got the film made. He got it shown. So I don't say don't critique it. What I'm saying is, the moment wasn't Sunday, before people were seeing, and people were celebrating at the fact that it only made him $11 million, which is already higher than La La Land, by the way. But anyways, I do think that there's moments to speak up, as someone that speaks up all the time, and to really sit back and think about the bigger picture of, if I have a megaphone and people listen to me, whether or not they should go see a film, and I'm saying this film is not representative of us, are people going to go see it? No. And so we shot ourselves in the foot. I complained enough about representation of Mexican Americans or Latinos in media. I put my money where my mouth is, and I went back to film school. And I'm paying $150,000 finding my films, except for my film Lola. I actually raised close to 20 grand to make it. So that's a different story. But every other film I've ever done, I paid for it myself. So should we speak out? Absolutely. Absolutely. I do not ever want to tell a person to quiet their voice, but I also think that there's a time and a place, and to think like it should have been done like Monday. Just wait 24 hours. Give it a little break for no other reason other than tell everybody to go see it. And then when you go see it, and by the way, did you notice how problematic it was that there wasn't enough Afro-Latinos in the starring role? But also think about, if they could think about this, is what concessions that Lin-Manuel Miranda and the director have to make in order for this film to get made. We don't know that. We will never know that, ever. Well, I can assume.
One of the problems I had with it, was, I think, the director, because I feel like somebody that had walked in Washington Heights once in their life might have been a better fit. Because I think that
you see, I've never been, and I prefaced that to somebody. I said I thought it was beautiful. Even though a Mexican flag shouldn't have been there, because the representation of Latinos and Mexicans in New York is so minimal, it was kind of cool to see it, but it wasn't necessary. But I'm Mexican American from LA. So everybody took that tweet and ran with it as like, oh my God, she's saying that she's white. And so her opinion is not valid. But I was literally prefacing it as, as someone not of that area, this is what I see.
Right.
But I am not of that area, so what do you think? But I do think that discussion, that dialogue should have been had after opening weekend, and it should have absolutely been had. And like you said, if the director or anybody went down Washington Heights, they would have seen diversity of the people. I've never been, so I couldn't tell you. I'm trusting you, and obviously everybody on Twitter that said everybody that lives there is black. And I'm like, okay, fine. Everybody there is black, so therefore there should have been more black actors.
They got it right in the background. They got it right in the barber shop and the the Dominican food trucks. I mean, I grew up as I was a taxi driver for a while. So I grew up I spent some time in Washington Heights, above Washington Heights, below Washington Heights in Queens. And it would be like if, say, you were making a movie about San Diego, but you eliminated the people that are in San Diego but that cross over to TJ a lot. Like if you were to be like,
Oh,
yeah, all the Mexicans in San Diego are all San Diego born Mexicans, and then so it's a very significant piece
right,
that's there. I
right.
think I think that when you talk about concessions, is probably where people have the thing, which is why didn't they fight lot harder for those
Right.
parts? I think maybe in their mind or in the producer's mind is we have a black person on the poster, the Benny character, and that allows us to do it. But the other part of that is they took away the storyline of Benny being of the Puerto Rican father being racist against African
I
Americans.
heard about that later. Somebody had tweeted about that. I'm like, that would have been, because I never saw the play, I'll be honest.
Right, me neither.
So I didn't know about that storyline until after the fact. I actually did share that tweet. Said, oh yeah, absolutely, because there's so many Latinos that are racist and bigoted and colorism. I mean, I made a documentary about it,
Right.
about Latino colorism. So yes, it's absolutely prevalent. It would have been beneficial to leave that in the film. I again, concessions, I don't know.
Exactly.
We will never, maybe years down the road, people will talk about it and say like, this is what we had to do in order for us to get the film made. We wanted to leave this in here, but Warner Brothers was going to pull out if we left that in there. Would they, at a certain point, like you're stuck in a really hard place, like make something really big and impactful, or make social commentary on something that we can do another time.
But I think that the other part of that,
not to not do it, but just in general, because we don't know, and I'm not defending the white powers that be.
No.
I just hate when people have these really, really strong opinions about they should have done this, and they've never been in a negotiating meeting ever. They've never worked in Hollywood ever, and so they don't know how it works, and it's not that easy. Like somebody's like, for my little film Lola, it took me 2 years to find Lola. 2. And I live in LA. And they're like, oh, you couldn't find an actor. There's a ton of actors, not all of them are not the right look. Not all of them bring out the character that you want. So yeah, we live in LA with thousands upon thousands of actors, many of them very, very good. Only one was Lola. I had to find that one.
Well, I think you also have the perspective from you and I also have the luck of being able to have cast films and understand what that process is. So other people aren't going to be able to view it from that. All they're seeing is that they're not being represented on screen. What I was trying to get to is, yeah, I think the director's choice was probably weak. I think that should have been a Latino or at least a New Yorker to direct that film to get more out of it. Because even though visually I think it was stunning, the cinematographer was a woman, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
She was incredible. Yeah, she was incredible. And from all I read was it was in development or for 10 years.
And then you say, well, this guy just did Crazy Rich Asians. We can attach him.
No, but he was attached. I don't know that he was attached. Yeah. So I think what happened is that because he's done other movies other than Crazy Rich Asians, that is not just his only call to fame. This is probably the only film that a lot of people remember him by. Right. But from what I've read, and again, this is, people can look it up. People can check me on this if this is true or not. But they had attached other directors. He wasn't the first one. He was the only one that moved it forward and got meetings. So
I said, it's a give and take. It's a negotiation.
It's a give and take. Okay, so when I worked in development, as an example, and I did buy scripts that got made, multi-million-dollar films, not at the level of In the Heights, but we're talking from $7-8 million on up, right? One of the writers that I met with attached herself as a director. We couldn't buy that film. We couldn't buy that script. We couldn't make it. So, and I talked to her because I have, this thing where I want to help women and people of color, right? And I'm like, are you 100% married to the script that I have to direct it? I'm like, what if that prevents your script from ever getting made? She was fine with that. The script has not been made. So there's that. It's like you're an artist. I'm an artist. I don't just make stuff to leave it
But
on
it's
my
an
desk
industry,
and
right?
look. Yeah, and it's in business too. On top of it, people have bills to pay. That was another thing that we're going to talk about. People have bills to pay. I suck being poor. I spiraled last year. And I clinically depressed. So it's not like I'm sad, depressed, but like clinically on medication, being watched by my doctors, depressed. I suck at being poor. Suck. It's physically horrible for me. I had a very, very, very bad year. So if I was put in a position like one of my movies, The Academy, that somebody wants to make, possibly, and I'm a no one director, even though I'm a good director, but I'm a no one director, and they're like, if I attach another director that can get it funded, are you going to be okay with it? I'm a business girl. Absolutely. Get it made. Get it made. But a lot of people can't think that way. They're like, she's a sellout. Like, why did Lin-Manuel sell out? Because he has bills. He has responsibilities. He has things.
He wants to make the next thing.
He wants to make the next thing. And if this has opened doors for hopefully other productions, so we can make other type of films, and we can, bring in the actors that we want to see, and make some beautiful shit and ugly shit and horrible shit and funny shit. Like, make all of it. Make all of it. And we should be allowed to make mistakes. I mean, if I showed any of my first movies, they're horrible. They're so bad. I wouldn't even show them to anyone. I didn't just suddenly grab a camera and start making films. I mean, I did, right, but that's a different story. But we're allowed. We should allow ourselves, and we should allow the fact that, then people are like, Lin-Manuel's excuse sucked because the movie was already made. I'm like, what do people want? What do they want? The movie is made, right? He apologized. He said he's going to do better. And now we can hold his feet to the fire, right? Because he apologized. He already screwed up. He didn't represent In the Heights as he should have. Right. So now people can check him. People can actually check him. And the people that he works with are going to be more thoughtful now, because they're going to be, remember what happened with In the Heights when we didn't, hire enough Afro-Latinos? We can't do that anymore. People are watching, and, things are going to happen. So, yes, speak out, but also think about the big picture. And the timing is everything. Timing is everything.
Just to wrap that part of, like, I agree with you, that a couple of points that came up while you were talking there. Number one, I hope we get to the point where we can just see a mediocre Latino movie come out.
Oh, God, yes.
Like we see so many mediocre white movies like all the time, and we're just not even worried about it. I want to get to that point, right?
Yes, please. I want to see a bad horror Latino film, or just, more Latino actors and more Latinos involved. I mean, to be the minority and to be the minority in Hollywood, behind and in front of the camera, that's disgusting. That's like not even cute. That is so freaking disgusking. On
and the
so
other
many
part,
fucking levels. Oops, sorry.
no, don't worry. You can't. Don't worry about it. It's fucking
okay. Like immediately I got all shiny. I'm like, damn it! Why did I curse?
The other thing is that I think that, like you said, in terms of the negotiation and stuff like that, I think that they felt we had a black person on the poster, so that's fine.
Right.
And they eliminated that part, so it's like, okay, we're not really, it's all feel good. We're not even addressing that part, the racism, the colorism. We're not addressing it. So if you were going that far, I think if I was on that project and I'm like, you're taking away the racism line, okay, we're casting a lot of white passing and then some brownish Latinos here.
Which, by the way, I want to know who's white passing, because I didn't see a single person that was white passing to me. So that's why I kept telling people.
Well, let me finish real quick. And then what I was saying, like, why didn't they just retcon the Benny character, and just, if you're going to take the whole racism out, then just make Benny the dark Dominican, and then you have a more fuller array of like our color spectrum, right? I think if you, and then in terms of white passing, I think maybe just one of the actresses could have, the girl that made the mistake, and she jumped into people's DMs on Twitter trying to like.
Oh, that I didn't hear.
because I think that the backlash was immediate, and then she was like trying to defend themselves, and they just kept digging themselves deeper. And they're like, there were a bunch of
Oh,
black
I
people at
didn't
the
hear. I didn't hear
casting.
about that. It was because of the Root interview, right?
Right. But then they got into people's inboxes, and she was trying to defend themselves and say, we embody the part. But the other part of that was, let me try to regain my train of thought there, which is, all right, is my other issue that came up during the backlash was that people were just taking somebody else's word for how they should feel about something. I brought this up. I started raising, recently, like a 6-year-old autistic boy, nonverbal. And I started to learn about autism and stuff like that. And I heard about that Sia movie that was coming out, which was about autism. And before the movie even came out, people in the autism community were freaking the fuck out. They were just mad. They were like, this doesn't represent us. They should have gotten an actual autistic actor to do this, blah, blah, blah. And my thought was, can I watch the movie first? Because I'm learning about this and I want to see how I feel after I see it. I saw the movie. They were 100% right. It was
horrible.
It was horribly done. It was horribly done. It was like just a stereotype on top of a stereotype about how they act and stuff like that. It was horrible. And for this, sad. I feel like a couple of people saw it, looked at it, analyzed it, and said, okay, we're getting left out again. But then everybody else was like, okay, I don't need to see it now. Because
that's what I said, yeah.
So if you're not going to take the time to actually see it, I think if you see it, either it reinforces your thoughts on it, it lets you have a more open and smarter conversation about the entire film. And you can say this, and this place is where you could have done something, or this character, I think, would have given you a wider array. Like I said, the Benny character, if you're taking away the racism line and there's no reason for him to be African-American because the storyline is that her dad, he works for her dad and he's racist against him and he doesn't want him to date his daughter, then just make Benny a Dominican. There's plenty of Dominicans named Benny in Washington Heights, so other thing. But again,
but you're absolutely correct. But I said timing is everything. Like, not have that discourse. Obviously, this is an important conversation to have, but the timing was problematic because of the sense that a lot of people just jumped on the bandwagon and were talking about it, and preventing people from going to go see it for themselves. They should have seen it and then had the discussion. Like, yeah, I also saw it, and yeah, that was a problem. This is not Washington Heights. They should have done this instead. Absolutely. The actresses going on people's DMs, my God, where's their publicist? The Root interview, that was, to me, when I heard it, somebody was like, oh my God, this is horrible. And I said, this is literally, because I did PR before, and I would craft messages and I would train my spokespeople. This is literally studio created and crafted messaging, what they said. This is, and they were like, no, they couldn't have known what they were going to be asked. And I'm like, you've never worked in PR. We literally go through 100 Q&As, if not more, and we prep our actors, we prep our directors, we prep everyone that's going to be involved, and we tell them how to answer and not to sway away from that. And until they're ready, then we'll do that interview. I think because it was media messaging versus something from the heart and authentic, I think that's why it kind of had a life of its own. Because if they would have done it more like del corazón, like if they would have done it from the heart, it's like, yeah, obviously they're the perfect actors for this role, but they could have brought in more people of color. They could have said it differently, but they were trained. That's media training for you.
Yeah, they just weren't ready. They were trained, but they weren't ready. Is what was happening right there.
Well, they didn't. They didn't add that personality. They didn't add their instincts. Right. And then people are like, they're white. How are they white Latinos? Do people not know what a white Latino is? A white Latino is literally someone that looks white, that could pass for they could pass for Caucasian. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That pass for Caucasian. Just because I'm not as dark, I cannot pass for Caucasian ever, right. ever. So just because I'm lighter than a lot of people, I'm still darker than my Caucasian looking family.
Yeah,
And people need to start thinking of what they say. Yeah.
One of the things that, because I think we covered pretty much everything when it comes to that. One of the things that I follow. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of like, because I know you had a full career kind of, or at least
Mhm.
you were entrenched in PR, marketing,
Yeah.
a bunch of other stuff in the interest. I was interested in sales, marketing as well, and you
Right.
talked about the fact that it gives you skills that you don't recognize that are actually going to help you
Absolutely.
in this industry. Did you always have were you always writing? Did you always have the creative juice and you just sort of went into those because you needed a career and then you wanted to get back into film, or were you full into those industries and then discovered your love of creating, writing, and wanting to make and create?
I was always a storyteller. I directed my first play in Mexico, one of my first vacations before we moved out there at the age of 7. I even
Wow.
designed a playbill. I got my first camcorder at about 15, and I started like documenting stuff, everything from baseball games because my brothers played baseball, and then editing them in camera, by the way, doing
That's always
interviews.
fun.
Yeah, writing, always wrote. Actually, what you do in PR, if there's a difference between a publicist and there's a difference between a PR pro. A publicist handles a celebrity or a person, and a PR pro usually handles a company or handles like a big campaign. So I was a PR pro and I had a public relations professional. So some of my clients range from ABC to La Opinion, the country's largest newspaper, to Disney, Macy's, Target. I focused on entertainment, fashion, lifestyle. So before I even applied to film school, I had already directed over 300 pieces of branded content, from writing, producing, and directing branded content. Traveled all over the country and did fashion segments. Was on air. I've been on air so many times I couldn't even tell you. And I've been to New York. I've been to Florida. I've been everywhere, all over the country, managing clients in English and in Spanish, and being their rep. Wrote everything. Got him on camera. And PR wasn't even considered a you couldn't get a PR degree. Now you can. A USC even offers public relations. But when I went to college, you had to get either a marketing degree, a communications degree, mass media degree. And those were the people that actually transitioned into the PR industry. The way I did it was I worked in fashion, and I went to volunteer at the Macy's Passport fashion show, which at the time was like this huge age fundraiser. Like all the celebrities went. It was the thing. It was held at the Santa Monica Barker Hangar. And one of the reporters, I believe it was from La Opinion, couldn't speak English. And they asked around everyone if anybody could speak Spanish, and I could. So I handled her. Like I managed her and I got her the interview she wanted and did all that thing. And she's like, you're actually really, really good at this. And you should do this full time. I started in the nonprofit world. My first boss, God bless his soul, he says he hired me because nobody else was going to hire me. I had no experience. And he worked for Bijan and Fred Heyman, top fashion designers. And he literally like held me under his wing and he taught me everything he knew. He also saw that he had a vision and said, the Latino population, because the Latino population wasn't always the majority. People don't remember that. The Latino population is going to grow. There's going to be, and the children of immigrants are going to grow up and they're going to make money and they're going to go to college, and you're going to need to focus on the bicultural Latino market here in the US. And this is going to be a really good niche for you. And that's what I ended up doing for all the agencies that I worked with. I was the one that was reaching out to millennials as well as Gen Xers in English, mostly not in Spanish. So whenever the client would say like, let's do something in Univision. And I'm like, no, people my age aren't looking at Univision. That's for our parents. That's for recent arrivals of our age as well. But I was definitely focused on doing more like social media. We called it digital media, working with influencers like yourself. So I did a lot, and then eventually I went on my own. World of Color for Disney. So I did Disney, I did World of Color, I did Modern Family, all the social media for that, got it out into the world. There was another show that also I launched, and I can't remember it.
Wow,
Yeah, so I did it. Yeah, I did it. Like, I hate like showing off, but
no.
when I tell people I know what I'm talking about, and the rooms that I've sat in, like, they've been so impressive because number one, there isn't representation, not just in Hollywood, but in general in corporate America, especially not in the advertising world, definitely not in PR. I was the first fashion PR publicist in the Latino market. The first one. Like, people followed what I was doing in order for them to get it done for their clients. I hired the first spokesperson, I media trained her, did fashion, the whole thing. This was like my baby. I don't want to say paved the way, but people don't remember that this did not exist before. This, like, big fashion brands didn't reach out to Latino publications or magazines ever. They weren't even considered. People talk about like Vogue having a closet that's bigger than an office. That didn't exist in any did not exist in Latina magazine. I had a really good relationship with them. I'd give them previews before things even launched. And then I kept complaining on social media about because I've always been into films. Like I said, I've always been into films, always into TV. Complaining all the time about the lack of representation, complaining about trauma porn, poverty porn, how this was not, everybody's story. And somebody said, maybe you should go to film school. And I think it was a dare. You never dare me, ever. Don't ever dare me, because I will take that and I'm going to run with it, and I'm going to do it.
That's how I got you to be on the podcast.
Yeah,
never freaking dare me. I dare you to come on my podcast. And,
but I would have done it regardless.
I'm there.
I would have done it regardless. But what I didn't realize is that to go to film school, it's harder to get into film school than it is to go to medical school. Number one. Number two, is extremely expensive, because you're not just paying for your tuition. You're not just paying for your books. You're paying for equipment. You're paying shoot, you're paying. You're also, when people's like, oh, I don't see people like me, so I can't go to school. Well, then don't go to film school, because everybody is. The 90% of the people that go to film school are very, very wealthy. I saw people making 5-minute films for $20,000 to $30,000.
Yeah,
easy.
When I went to film school, when I applied and got into NYU Tisch, but I did not have
school.
I did not have $40,000 a year. So I ended up going to state school with a film program that was 20 people. I was the only Latino. There was one woman, and then there was 18 other white males. 9 of them wanted to be Woody Allen. 9 of them wanted to be Quentin Tarantino.
Quentin Tarantino was the thing when I went to film school. Everybody wanted to be Quentin Tarantino. Yeah, and it was me. And actually, I got in, which is funny. This is why I watched The Bicycle Thief, because obviously you have to submit a portfolio. I got into Art Center, which is the #1 design school in the world. So you're focused and immersed in the arts. And one of the papers that I had to write to apply, I think, asked me about who my inspiration was. And I did say Woody Allen, and he's a creep, but I still love his films. Manhattan is brilliant. One of the best fucking films ever. Gabriel Figueroa, best cinematographer in the world. People don't realize the magic that he created with a camera and with a light. He's amazing. And my favorite film, The Bicycle Thief. And they called me literally in less than 24 hours, because they're like, we have never, ever received anyone give us those 3 things together. Ever. Or like, they did not even know who Gabriel Figueroa was. I was like the only.
We don't know who it is, but he sounds cool. You're in. No, yeah.
Love Gabriel Figueroa. I'm like, oh my God, love. They had an exhibit here in LA like 7-8 years ago, and I think I went to see it like 3 times. And if you were my Facebook friend during that time, I apologize, but I posted like 1 million photos. I'm like, oh, this is so gorgeous. It hurts. So beautiful. So yeah, I but when I applied to go to film school, actually, I thought I was just bored. I thought, I just need to mix it up. I've reached the pinnacle of PR. Disney is the pinnacle of PR, obviously. Like, I reached the pinnacle of PR. What else could I do? And I went to, and this is going to sound so white, but I went on a yoga trip, weekend trip with a bunch of women, and I hurt myself, of course, because I hurt myself. And we're sitting down, we're having wine. And I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? I feel like I'm having an early midlife crisis. I need to get an MBA. And everybody's like, Anna Lydia, do what you love. Just do what you love. Do what you've always wanted to do. So I went to Loyola. I met with the admissions person there. And little coy guy. He was like, well, you've been out of school for a while. I don't think you need to go back to school for film. He's like, why don't you take a few classes at Santa Monica College, which Santa Monica College, if anybody's in LA, has some of the best freaking classes. And a lot of the professors teach at Loyola, USC, UCLA. So it's an excellent school. So it's a junior college, but it's an excellent school. And they now have 4-year degrees as well. So I took a couple of classes. Actually, I took like 3 while I was still working full time. And I did it on the down low. Like, I didn't really tell anyone, because who wants to tell anyone you're going to school, right? Well, I got my first DSLR camera because I was still shooting just straight prosumer. And I got into an exhibit within less than 30 days. My first DSLR camera, and I got into an exhibit, which was craziness. And then and then I shot like 2 mini documentaries that are still online that I'll send them to you. They're so bad, but I directed them, and oh my God, they're so bad. But the professors gave me, one of them was the former director of the San Francisco Film Festival, and she had taken a sabbatical and was teaching here in LA. And after I did a couple of documentaries, she came to talk to me, and she's like, Anna Lydia, you really need to pursue this. You're very, very, very good. I don't know why you want to get an MBA. And then I met Rodelia Shaw, which was a director, and we're still friends, by the way. She's the director of the Media Studies program at Santa Monica College. And she was like, you need to apply to film school. I will make calls. I will literally write you any letter of recommendation that you need to do to seriously pursue your dreams.
How
This
long
is
ago
where
was this?
I graduated in 2018.
Okay, so not that long ago.
No, which is crazy. So when I'm feeling down, I'll look at my resume to see what I did.
No, yeah, you
But
have the cred. You got the street cred. You got the Mexico cred. You got the LA cred. You got cred all over the place in terms of the
It pisses
journey that
people off,
music.
though. But I graduated in 2018. I did Art Center in 2 years. Art Center has terms. So I think it's 14-week terms, and then you have 3 weeks off, and then 14 weeks, and 3 weeks off. 90% of my classes, at Art Center, they're studio classes, which, for example, at USC, you work on one film. At Art Center, you're shooting every single week. So by the time I graduate, and USC, they own your shit. You can't do anything after you graduate. It's theirs. When you graduate Art Center, and I think Tisch does the same thing. They own it. At Art Center, you own your stuff. So I had hours upon hours upon hours of footage that's how I got Meeting Brown done. I wrote the first draft of my script for Lola at Art Center. I wrote the first draft of my feature, The Academy, at Art Center. I wrote a pilot called LA that actually made the finals at the Blacklist Women in Film. I wrote, what else did I write? A Blackish Speck. So by the time I graduated, I had a portfolio bigger than a lot of people that have tried to get into the industry for 10 years. It was huge, right? It's because the school, you're literally on a hamster wheel. You're working so intense that
While you had a full-time job.
The last year of school, I only worked part-time. I only did freelancing. But there were times that, honestly, I spent the night at a local hotel. Really? Because the school was an hour and a half each way to go to and from.
Wow.
And I'm married and I have a dog. So when I had my final show, one of the board members, because my husband went to my final show, and one of the board members came to him and said, thank you for letting us have your wife for 2 years. All of us that graduated together, we had the Art Center gray. Everybody goes gray going to Art Center. You either get divorced or you break up with your girlfriend. I mean, it's known. It's a very intense program. So I've talked to
Absolutely.
a couple of people that want to go, and I'm like, are you sure? You really need to talk to your partners because this is no joke. This is not a USC. This is not a Tisch where you only do one film at semester. You're literally
No.
shooting weekly.
I think that's probably the most intensive. I mean, the reason that I dropped out of film school is because I was going at a time where the school that I was at was still teaching cutting, pasting films. They were editing on an Avid machine the size of my house, and I was reading.
I learned editing on Avid.
Yeah,
by the way.
I was reading trades, and it was like you're gonna be able. This was in 1990, but we were able to. I was reading trades that said in a couple of years you'll be able to edit on your laptop and this and that, and I was like, why am I learning this outdated method of filmmaking? The film study classes bore me to death because you're telling me how to feel about movies that I've already seen.
Oh,
and
you didn't like film history. I love film history.
I just don't like being told how you should feel about something.
Oh, well, they shouldn't tell you. They shouldn't tell you that. I mean, they should tell you like what the imagery means or what. Like I remember watching. Did you see the Odessa Steps? Like that clip?
No. Like I think that the main thing with that is that I think you have to start writing to be able to understand that you're not going to know the themes that you're writing until you're done. Because I think there's a part of the writer creator that has this thing that you're trying to put out into the world. So you can sit down and say, I'm going to write this drama and it's going to be funny. And then you write it and then you show it to somebody else. And then they say, it seems like you're talking about this, or it seems like there's a theme of this. And then you as a writer look at it and go, oh, wow, I didn't even realize that that's what I was saying. And then that's when you can go back and add it. So I think for me, as somebody who feels like they're smart and who's a narcissist, somebody telling me
you're Latino.
Somebody who tells me you're not understanding this, you need to figure out that the reason that his arms are like this when he falls out of the window is because he's supposed to be Jesus Christ, and because of this and this and this. And then I'm just like, yeah, okay, I understand that you can see it that way, but let me figure that out myself, I guess was the thing. So that's why I didn't like those aspects of it.
Oh, that's too bad. Yeah, I think that everybody's, I've heard stories like yours where, wasn't a positive experience. Me, honestly, it was one of the most hardest experiences of my life. I miss workshopping my scripts with my classmates, and I'm still in touch and friends. Actually, I hired two of my classmates for my last project. I missed that, but I think that the environment that we were in, because we were immersed and we were working so hard on these classes on such an intense level, we formed these type of relationships that you really can't have at any other school. Yeah. That's uniquely, when people here in LA more so, I because I haven't gone to New York in a few years, but here in LA, if you tell somebody, especially like Disney, like corporate clients, that you went to art centers, like, wow, you survived. You survived. You made it out. There is that certain level of, if you made it through art center, you can do anything. There's something that people will never understand, that if at USC you have one pilot that you have to do and you work on it the whole semester. I'm like, oh, wouldn't that be beautiful? But guess what? I worked on a pilot, 2 shorts, a feature. I worked on a lot more stuff. Now, the networking at USC, it's the mafia. They're incredible. They're incredible at networking. Art Center, no. We're kind of, I think all of us are kind of, I don't want to say chill, but we're more about like, if you like somebody, we'll invite them out for coffee and we'll hang. It's never really networking. It's a different type of networking. So, and I'm sure there's other people that network like USC people, but we're not. In general, I would say Art Centers is very, very, very different than that. But I'm so sorry you had that experience.
No, I think if we would have had DSLRs, if I would have been able to, if I would have been going to film school in the time of DSLRs and more immediate ability to we shot something, let's look how it looks, let's play around with it, I think I would have been more into it. But I think I just felt like I was learning surgery with sticks and stones. I went at a very specific time.
Bad. Yeah,
I went at a very specific time. No, but I'm glad I dropped out because I lived my life. I traveled. It broadened me.
Right.
I
It
came out
always
to
works
California,
out. Yeah. But you know,
and
you
then
want to know something really funny? I still dream about one day shooting on film.
oh, absolutely.
Uh,
I had
yeah.
somebody on the pod a few months ago who's shooting their next film on 16 millimeter, and we just talked about the whole process.
I would love that, especially because someone, not, I don't think everybody can shoot on film. It's not just a stylistic thing. It's
Right.
also a business decision because shooting on film is very expensive. So if you're the kind of director that doesn't plan and that kind of wings it and takes like 12 takes, like I forgot what director it is
Like
that
Fincher would spend like $8
Adventure,
billion.
there you go.
Yeah,
That like
yeah,
does 12,
yeah.
13 takes. It's not for you. But
He can't
someone
work on
like
film.
me, no, like I over plan, like Bong Joon-ho, who did Parasite. Like when I saw him speak at some event, and he was like showing pictures of how he plans everything, and how many takes he takes. And I looked at my husband. I'm like, you see, I'm not the only crazy person. I plan so much that I literally can shoot 8 pages a day, if not more.
No,
In
I've
a
shot.
10-hour day,
I
and
I
beautiful.
I shot Ladron in one day.
Yeah,
The Bicycle
yeah,
Thief in one day. 20 minutes. It was probably about 17 pages. We shot that in one day.
yeah. We
Uh,
shot ours. We shot Lola in 2.5 days because of the locations.
mhm.
And then remember, we shot it during COVID, which is unheard of. We shot it during the first weekend we could shoot in LA.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um,
So I got
so
my PhD in filmmaking from that, though.
all right, so we've established your beginnings and your cred in terms of like how you transition from the PR and stuff like that to filmmaking.
Hmm.
Now you enter the industry with all this experience, from like a rough and tumble sort of school, sort of hard knocks.
Right.
You like that seems like it's a breeding ground for like an indie guerrilla sort of filmmaking sort of
Hmm. Hmm.
establishment. Um,
Right.
how did it just end up that way that you were like, fuck it, I'm just going to do my own project, stuff like that? Or were you originally, because when we think about it as a filmmaker, like I said, I've made 2 features, probably about 15 shorts. I'm still looking we still haven't found a manager, or I've had conversations with managers and agents, but it seemed like they were just trying to fill out a card that say, look, I represent a Latino, or something like that.
Right.
So
Right.
when filmmakers think about the paths to success, in terms of, all right, you make a couple of shorts, you get some festival love, the studios come to you, right? Or you work your ass off, you get a couple of not a degrees, you get a couple of laurels on your poster, and all of a sudden you find an agent, and you get to be able to take that agent and have them
Hmm.
open up the door and get you in front of some gatekeepers. But it
Hmm.
seems like your route, even though you have some insight into the industry, has been more of, I don't need the gig. I don't need the agent. I don't need I can do that. I can sort of do that for myself. I'm just going to keep creating and just get gigs and jobs and just keep working and then just showcase myself. Was that a conscious decision for you once you got out of school? Were you originally sort of thinking that you were going to take a more traditional path, right? As
Hmm.
one would say, or did you always know that you were not going to do it the traditional sort of way?
Okay, so when I got into Art Center, it was 2015, I want to say. That was the early stages of Netflix. I don't even think Hulu existed. Can you believe there was a time that Hulu did not exist and all the streamers did not exist?
Or that Netflix
So
came in the mail?
Netflix came in the mail, and I always got 3 movies at once because I wanted options. But but I remember being asked when you go around Robin in school, like, what do you want to do after film school? And I was like, I want to work at a streamer. And I didn't call them streamers back then. I forgot what we called them. So I want to work at Netflix. And I want to make movies like The Devil Works Prada. It is funny because I went on 20. So I already had like I already had a style, if you think about it that way. So I went in thinking that. And then as I created more and more, that's a good thing about creating so many projects. You get to see a theme in your work. And my theme, as one of my classmates said, it was very feminine, which, he was very young. He was in his 20s. So what he meant to say by feminine is that it was very stylized, that my work is very, it's very stylized.
Right.
Um, but I didn't appreciate that comment then, because I wasn't still sure of what I was, because you go in thinking one thing, but you're not this confident, cocky Colombian boy. You're a woman, and you're the only
Right.
Mexican American there, and nobody's. But then later, I found out they did appreciate it, and because I'm getting an article soon in the school paper, so I didn't know this going through it. It was really, really hard. And another thing they tell you in film school is like, get a job, get any job, just start working, be a PA, be an assistant, do whatever you can. They never, versus at USC, they tell you like, you have, you're going to get here. And it was a very,
you need to attach yourself to your own script.
Right. Like they give you, it's an entirely different way of setting you up for success or failure, either or. So you're having kids that make $20,000 films and you're telling them to get a PA job. You think they're going to take it? Probably not. Right. Unfortunately for me, I got bills to pay. Mommy and daddy isn't going to, although my mom is well off, she's not going to pay for my student loans, so it was on my husband and me. So I had to work immediately. I had a resume before I even finished school. I had already interned at a couple places, or 3 places, while I was going to school. One of my professors asked for my resume the week of graduation. And so right before rehearsal, I had a phone interview. And then they called me the day of my graduation day, to offer me the job to work on a film set. And the problem is that they wanted me to start, I graduated on a Saturday. They wanted me to start on Monday. And I was like, I'd be happy to start that Monday. So I was only going to have one day off. I'm like, I'll be happy to start. The problem is that I have jury duty. So if they call me in, I'm going to have to leave. And they're like, no, we can't do that. So then I think like 3 weeks later, I get a call from another professor who wants me to do research. She was working on a Marvel show. She's like, my production company wants to hire you to do research on a Marvel show. Can you do that? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So I worked for her. And then a few weeks after that, like not even 2, I would say, I got a call again from the people that originally hired me on the movie set. And they said that they needed me as a day player to work in locations if I wanted it. And I said, yeah, of course. Before I was, that hired me the rest of the week. Before the week was up, they found out that I had the fashion background. So they also hired me in the costume department. And then everybody was talking about me. And then I got hired in the production office. So I had 3 roles in that film. Before the film was wrapped, I was already working with a producer, which was my former professor, on 3 other films. And then from there, I worked on like NBA commercials. I did like 3 NBA commercials, Firestone commercials, like 2 other films. And then my other professor called me up and they're like, Steve McQueen's first wife, Steve McQueen, the king of cool, needs a story editor, an assistant. Do you want to work with her? And I'm like, yep, absolutely. So I did that as well. And then I got hired by Mulan, and I was a script coordinator for Mulan. So it was like one thing led to another thing, but I never say no. I think that's what a lot of people are like, well, I'm going to be a screenwriter. It's like, yeah, I'm still, and during this process, I'm still writing. I literally, when I was working on one of these movies, we had a 5-day shoot. And then when it premiered here in LA, Meeting Brown, I went on, a 6-day shoot, but we started on Sunday, never mind. So on my only day off, I went to the premiere here in LA. And then the next day went to set to work on the film that I was working on. So I've never stopped working on my own stuff while working on paid work. But all of my paid work, thankfully, has been in the industry. I also do copywriting. I've also done freelance article writing. I just got offered a position to write about the film industry and this big website dedicated to the film industry. And the only thing I did let go of is I don't do PR anymore, even though I get a lot of offers like to go back into the PR industry. So I've referred people into that industry. And then, of course, anything related to my films, I do my own PR. This time I had a producer. So she did the first draft of the press release, which really helped out. And then I finalized that. And then we each, like, I pretty much took the reins on media outreach for the film. But I think a lot of people are out of work in the film industry is because they just don't want to do it. They just don't want to be a PA. But I got hired again in the locations department for one day as a day player for like $15 an hour, I think. And then it kept going and going and going. So I've never been that person that comes off when I work, I'm too good for this. Like, even when I got it, I had my first writer's room last year. All it is to be a writer's assistant is to take notes. It's not it's not this big complicated job. You're really just taking notes. Right. And I did it. And I did it with a smile. Yeah, like, you just do it with a smile. And will I work on another writer's room? If I get offered a job in a writer's room, I'll take it. Will I go into a room as a writer? If I get offered that, I'll take it. I'm not going to turn work away. Like, right now, I just did a branded campaign, and I think you saw when I announced it, but it started as something small and it blew up into something big. And it's really funny how people are reaching out to me now, like, oh shit, they're taking me seriously, versus before they really didn't. And I said, listen, I didn't go to film school to play. Right. I went to film school to really change the perception of Latinos, of audiences about Latinos in media, specifically, Mexican Americans, because I am Mexican American. So I do want to see a more positive representation of us in media. And selfishly so, going back to what, when I went to film school and very innocently said, I want to make films like The Devil Wears Prada. Well, I was talking about the style more than anything, not necessarily, and a little bit of that story of the woman coming up ahead and coming into her own and, and succeeding and doing it in such a way where it's beautiful. Really, that's what I intend on doing. And that is what I'm doing with my own projects. Like, even the pilot that I told you about, it's like, yeah, it's a little dark, but stylistically, like, even as I write it, it's going to be it's beautiful. It's a beautiful pilot with intention, with meaning. But I've, just like I write and can be a producer and director on these big campaigns, if somebody calls me and says, hey, Anna Lydia, can you come in and be an office PA? And I'm available, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take that job.
Well, I think what's inspiring, I would say, for people that might be thinking or trying to jump into it, is that even though you're taking, I don't want to say a non-traditional path, because you did go to film school and you do have a background that sort of lends itself to the backbones of that industry.
Right.
You're taking the non-traditional approach in that you're not turning stuff down, you're not thinking you're too good for it, and you're not saying the only way you can make it is if I just sit there and I just write all day and then post on Twitter the rest of the day, and then I write a spec script, and then I just hope and pray, and I enter these writing competitions, and then I get feedback and stuff like that. You're basically saying, I'm making my own path. I'm taking the jobs that I can because I need to feed my family, and I need to, and I need money to make my own projects. Right. So I think that's what's impressive to me, that you're sort of
thank you,
recalibrating what it means to set your own path. Because I think as creatives and filmmakers, and especially Latino filmmakers, where we already feel like that we're a couple of steps behind,
right?
Because my experience is I've applied to some of these programs where they tell me, hey, Luis, you obviously you've made some projects, blah blah blah. We want to offer you the opportunity to go to North Carolina for 3 weeks and shadow a director so that you can learn how to be a director.
Oh, take it.
And no, but my thing is, I've made 2 SAG ultra low budget films. I've made 15 shorts. I've won awards. I've been featured at film festivals. I'm in my 40s. I have a life established in San Diego. Like, I don't want to be, I'm not an up and coming filmmaker. I'm just a filmmaker. I get judged across all things. So I think that those programs and stuff like that feel to me, or from my experiences going through the interview process, felt to me like they were checking off boxes, and it was like, tokenism or representation or allyship, but it's like performative, which is
Right.
something I heard.
And you're right. You're absolutely right. When I graduated film school, I entered all the fellowships, the ABC, the CBS, the right, the essays, the time that it takes to do all this shit is crazy. Getting the letters of recommendation, I did everything. I mean, my scripts were passed around school. I got a manager because of my scripts, and I know it was good. Like, I know it was good. I'm not being cocky about it. I know it was good. And then later I met with a few people that work in the industry, very big people, and they read the script and they're like, yeah, maybe we can change this. It was more like story versus anything, it was more like stylistic choice. Like, I would have done this versus this, but it's good. What you did was good. There was no problem whatsoever. It came down to my essay. And that was the last time I entered any fellowship. I found out that what they're looking for is that they're looking for someone that they can claim that they've helped, that they've claimed that this person couldn't have done it without their help.
Yeah.
And they are big on trauma sob stories.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They want to know that. And they've interviewed people, and I've heard what they've asked, like, so tell me about the biggest trauma you've ever experienced, or tell me about your first racist interaction, in school or whatever. Unless you're in a writer's room and you're really fleshing out a storyline that's relevant to that and you feel comfortable bringing it out, it's nobody's fucking business. Number one. Number two, that does not mean, and this is probably the most important one, that does not mean that you're a better storyteller just because you fill all the boxes and you are exactly what the powers that be feel comfortable with. Meaning they're only going to feel comfortable with people that they feel are beneath them. And if you're okay with that, I have heard people that use I'm an illegal immigrant when they overstayed their visa and their parents were paying for their $10,000 a month apartment. That is very different than I'm an illegal immigrant, right?
Right.
So I've heard of people saying that they used their grandparents' santeria as a way to get in. And I'm like, oh, wow, so your grandmother did santeria? No, but I'm from Cuba, so I just put that in there.
No, I can.
So much stuff.
Yeah,
Much stuff. And if you read, because many times these scripts are public or you can gain access to them in some way, shape, or form. They literally told me they look at your essays first. They have two piles, the essays and then the agents and managers that push these people through the program. When it gets to the top 10, that's when they finally read your script, top 10 or 15 or something like that. And they don't even read the entirety of your script. They just read the first few pages.
Yeah, I felt like
that was the last time. I will never, ever, ever, and this is on record, ever submit to any of those fellowship programs.
Put it on wax. We're putting it on wax.
Oh, you know what? I've said it on Twitter plenty of times. And if people want to enter, writing contests, and they have the money and they feel, it feels good to make it to the finals. I'm not going to lie. When I made it to the finals in Women in Film and I got the call because I didn't respond to the email right away. And and I was with some friends and I started crying. I'm like, wait, what? I did what? I was like so excited, right? Because I made the finals. It feels good. I'm not going to lie. When somebody reads your stuff and when you get a laurel, when you get into a festival,
Absolutely.
It feels amazing. It feels, if you need that, and you have the money to pay for it, go for it.
Right.
I personally do not want to spend that kind of money on writing contests. I think there's only a few that matter to the industry. Yeah. And I know because I worked in development at two separate companies. So they're, development folks, agents, and managers aren't looking at all the contests that people are entering but that's your money. So I used to tell people don't enter. Now I'm like, I'm not going to go in your pocket. That's your money. Do whatever the heck you want to.
Plus, there's a whole
Make-
industry that's built around taking filmmakers' money from festivals that are
yeah,
festivals where it's like cash for
consultants,
laurels
whatever.
and
I
this
mean,
and that, script feedback, this and that.
yeah, if
There's this
you
whole
want to
industry.
spend that money, if you want to spend that kind, I mean, when I was invited to be part of a Disney program for writers and film professionals, and one of the first things that they told me was that they don't even look at films that have more than 5 laurels, because if you have more than 5 laurels and you haven't bought or hasn't done anything for you, it actually does worse. It actually affects you more than anything. So my goal always is to get into the right festivals, not to every freaking festival.
Right.
Like for Lola, I have a goal. Like I don't want to get into more than 6 festivals. I've gotten into 2. Hopefully I'll get into 3, 4, 5, 6, and then after that, get it off the film festival circuit and sell it. Like I did with my last film, and I sold it to Shorts TV. It was my first sell. And now for this one, I'm looking to sell it to a streamer or something else. But you need to have, the festival. And then first off, I think the most important thing, it's very, very, very expensive. Like each time you enter, it costs money. And then if you actually get in, then you need to spend the money, if you haven't already, on getting like the rights. I already spent the money. I learned my lesson. Yeah, on the music, get your rights, all the paperwork for your SAG stuff. Like make sure that like all your ducks are in a row. So I already spent the money on that ahead of time, right? But a lot of people, so I didn't know this when I sold my first film, that the music that I got, I didn't have rights for broadcast. So I had to pay for that later and get a lawyer and all that stuff. So, get all that stuff ahead of time. Get it, I learned very, very quick. I'm a quick learner. So once that happened the first time, I'm like, I will never let that happen again. And I will do it right from the get-go. And I think it all stems from working in PR and marketing, is that you're not allowed to make a million mistakes because you're playing with other people's money. So, or and that money affects you, because then they won't hire you and you lose a contract. So you can't mess around. So everything I do for my own films, I don't mess around. I don't mess around at all. And all the money that I made was public. I don't know if you ever saw that, but I send out monthly updates. Like, this is how much we raised. This is how much money we're going to spend. This is what it's going to be used for, because there isn't a lot of transparency in the indie, especially in the people of color film world. Like, you don't know where the money went. Did it go? I mean, I've met with producers that got a grant and they're like, well, I want to get paid. And I'm like, are you crazy? That grant's to make your film. It's not whatever. I totally removed myself from her, because I'm like, I don't want to be associated with that. So my budgets are always public, always public. Like, I don't pay myself. It's my project. You shouldn't pay me. When I get hired to direct my next film, hopefully my next film would be, and Lydia gets hired for the next film, then yeah, absolutely, I'm going to get hired and paid by somebody else, but not by people that donated to my film, because this was the first time I ever did a crowdfunding campaign.
So, I mean, like I said, I'm learning and I love hearing you talk about it, because I think it's, like I said, it's a fresh perspective, or like a more hustle-based perspective on breaking into the industry. And I think that a lot of people that are like, they've made a couple of movies, they're in that in-between space, like where they're not getting, they haven't been able to make the contacts to get into a room, they haven't been able to turn that festival success into having an agent or being able to get into a room. And like I said, the reason I had issues with those programs is, listen, man, I just want to be judged against all other filmmakers. Just because I'm a Latino, just because I'm Colombian, I can tell you my sad immigrant stories if you want, but I don't make that. I don't make a trauma porn. I'm like the Colombian Kevin Smith. I want to make dick jokes. I want to make something that makes people laugh. I don't need to be the important filmmaker. And one of the things that I like, because I work with the San Diego Latino Film Festival, and they've accepted me a couple of times because my films aren't like a lot of the movies that they bring in. Because you think San Diego, you think border stories, you think this and that. But some people out there are aware that it takes more, and that we're not a monolith, and that we have a variety of stories to tell. So I really appreciate you bringing that perspective of taking the skills that you've learned in other industries,
Right.
bringing those and helping you along the way, and not getting stuck in this is the only path there is to success.
Right. There
Because
isn't. And an agent or a manager. I've had 2 managers. Neither of them have ever gotten me any work. All the work I got on my own. And what I tell people
that's
time
awesome
and
to
time
hear.
again, yeah, is that you're not ready for an agent or a manager until you can get work on your own, because they're not going to do the work. I mean, maybe there's some brilliant manager out there that wants to rep me. Hey, but honestly, I can handle myself in a room. I dealt with Disney, for God's sakes. I dealt with the head of Disney Multicultural and head of Disney Marketing, and ABC and Disneyland and Disney. I'm sorry, Disney Resorts. It's not Disneyland. It's Disney
Right.
Resorts. So I've dealt with multi-million-dollar corporations on multi-million-dollar deals. I can handle myself in the room. I think it's more a matter as, are they going to be okay with a woman who knows her shit and is still, humble enough, if you want to call it that, to
Right.
do things as well, to get through the door, to be the PA, to
Or
be
they'll
the
label you as difficult.
yeah, or that's one thing. I've never been labeled at work, thank God. Anybody that works with me knows that there has never been a person that works with me that doesn't want to work with me again. Let's put it that way. That actors will recommend me, directors, anybody that has ever worked with me wants to. I'm not difficult at work because I know when to push. That's why I said, like, the timing about this film. Like, I'm not saying don't push, but I also know when not to push, when it's appropriate to, when it's not appropriate to. And it's also, I am manager, I'm someone that can be managed, but I'm someone that can also manage others. And I'm quick. I'm very, very quick. I'm resourceful. I know my shit. I know where I lack
obvious.
also. Yeah.
You got to be
Yeah.
self-aware.
I think there's something to be said about women in general that can't say what they're good at and can't say what they need help on, or what they I don't want to say lack, but what they haven't learned yet. I think if you're 20, you're still kind of figuring it out. But people like us in our 30s and 40s, like, you should be not confident, but be knowledgeable and real enough to know. If you don't want to call it confidence, don't call it that. But to know, like, what are you good at?
Right.
What can you do really well? What is your superpower? What is your? I have a dog and a cat that are fighting right now.
No, don't
What
worry
is your superpower? A dog and a cat. A dog and a cat. What is your superpower? What can you do better than anyone else? And where can you learn? And where can you, where can you take something away from to help you grow as well? But I would love to see more women that can be honest and say, like, I'm really good at this. Not oversell yourself. I don't believe in fake that, especially as full of color, because if you fake it till you get it and you screw up, you messed it up, not just for you, but for a lot of people. So I'm not a fan of that at all, because I've seen it happen where I've been on a film shoot and I hired this one Latina, and her colleague to be a choreographer, and they show up 3 hours late. So because of them, I couldn't bring any other people of color until I could bring other people of color. You know what I'm saying? So fake it till you make it only works so long. Maybe if you're white in a white world, that works, but for people of color, it doesn't work. Like, you have to, yes, we have to work doubly hard. Many times get paid a little bit less, but guess what? All that shit that I did, that was $15 an hour, that was PA work. My resume looks hell of a lot better than those people that held back and wouldn't do the work. I got that Vice project this year. I got this branded project this year, and I still have like probably 2 more projects coming up the end of the year and that's not counting my own stuff.
No. Like I said, you're an inspiration, and like I said, I value the fact that you're taking a non-traditional approach to it. And like I said, I think there's a lot of people out there, myself included. Obviously, I'm talking from my own personal experience, that don't want to get pigeonholed into these little things
Yeah.
where they want to teach you. I just want, like I said, the only reason that I think that the agent manager thing makes sense for some of us is because they are still the gatekeepers. So there is still the idea that I just honestly, I have intellectual properties, I have all kinds of stuff. I'm a salesperson by heart. I know that if I get into the room, I'm going to sell myself and I'm going to sell my project. It's just getting into that room that
Right.
that people feel that, well, you're not going to get into that room until you somebody presents you to the gatekeeper.
Can I tell you a
doing.
secret? Can I tell you a huge secret?
Absolutely.
So one of the writers that works with Spike Lee, I heard him at a WGA event 2-3 years ago, and all the writers were talking about their agent or their manager, whatever, and they get to him, and I'll never forget what he said. He's like, never had a manager, never had an agent, hasn't stopped me from selling my films. All you need, honestly, all you need is a lawyer. You need an entertainment lawyer. I have one. And if you know the people, and I mean, Universal once reached out to me, actually right before the pandemic, which totally sucks, but right before the pandemic, I'm like, God damn it, why did this happen? And I did meet with them, but then pandemic. So people that said they sold shit during the pandemic, they're lying. They're lying. But anyways, all you need, honestly, I got it through to Universal. You know how? A lawyer. Done and done. That's all you need. That's the biggest secret anyone ever needs, is an agent or a manager are great to make introductions, but you don't need them. If you can get work on your own, you don't need them. You are just paying them 10 to 20% of your stuff. So my last manager, because I had a bad experience with my previous one, and I know I can get work, I was like, can't wait to pay you that 20% when you find me work. Everything else, it's my stuff. You're not getting a percentage. Zero regrets. She didn't get $1. So that's the thing. You need a lawyer? Absolutely. Get yourself a lawyer. But you don't need to pay the lawyer right away until they start doing stuff for you, like reading over your contracts, reading over NDAs, reading over like submission stuff. As a professional, as a creative, you should have two things. Everyone should have two things: a therapist and a lawyer.
All right.
Period. Therapist, lawyer.
Right.
Have those two things, because it's a hard freaking business and people lie. Like the fact that people were selling, oh, I'm selling stuff last year. Nobody was buying stuff. Nobody. My husband works at Warner Brothers. I work for 2 development companies. I have a ton of friends. They weren't buying stuff. Unless you're some big time writer that already had a relationship with them, where they already had the script at their desk, and it was like an easy, like, we already had it. We already went through the whole process. Let's just get it done. Even if they got it, they just have it. It doesn't mean it's going to get made. There's tons of stuff that they got this year that wasn't from new writers, I promise you. And by new, it means people that didn't have a relationship with them prior, that hadn't sold something with 10, 15 people that they look at and I know this because I did this, and I'll call the agency, hey, does so-and-so have anything new? Tell me about it. I need to tell the CEO. We don't even look for stuff. It's very rare that we get stuff from new writers. Very, 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 very extremely, extremely rare. But if you know people, and somebody had said this on Twitter, that other writers will help you. Unless that other writer does something completely different than you and is absolutely professional, they're not helping you. I don't care what you say. Another horror female writer isn't going to introduce another horror writer to the same person to go for that one slot.
No.
It just doesn't make sense. But if you have a community of writers, like I have my writers brunch and my writers group, we all write such different stuff that one of the writers, Salvador, which I love, I say he's my primo, he's my Mexican primo, is that I'm going to introduce them once and he knows this, and I say this, I'm like, once the pilot go through the production companies and the production company that requested it and they like it, I build trust, so now I can introduce you. So, but they need to like my stuff first and feel that I delivered on my promise of having a kick-ass pilot. Whether or not they get it, I will make that introduction once I know that I'm solid with them. But if it was someone that's writing the same exact stuff I am, I'm the kindest person ever. I have shared so much business with people. I have peeled people's businesses. I am not going to introduce you. I'm not going to introduce you. I'll be honest. I'm just not.
It's a dog eat dog world. I mean, there's a realism about it, which is everybody's trying to get somewhere. I just, like I said, I find it refreshing your take on it. I find refreshing your approach that you like to hire people, you like to pay people well for their work. You don't take lowball gigs. You call out lowball gigs. I love that. You know, nobody can pay their rent and exposure. You know, part of the reason that, you know, I've made 15 shorts, I made 2 features. The reason people worked with me when I started is they believed in me. They liked my writing. They liked my style. They know that I finished projects. And to this day, I still have enough goodwill here locally. I know probably about 200 actors in San Diego. I know a dozen DPs, sound people, everything. If I wanted to tomorrow and I say, hey, I'm making a movie, who wants to come play? I will get a full set. I will get a full team together to come work for me. But I don't.
Good for you. And that says a lot about you, by the way.
Yeah.
That says a hell of a lot. People don't underestimate the fact that, you know, being resourceful and having people that you can call on and that they'll respond. Like I said, everybody that I've ever worked with, I don't think there's a single person that said or that will say that they'll never work with me again.
No, absolutely.
Ever. Except important. For this one girl. She sucked.
Well, when we were doing indie films, I made sure that people got fed right, that they got their footage, that I treated them right, that I did that. And I think that but right now, I think I've done enough of that. During the pandemic, I was like, I'm going to finish up some projects. I'm going to start up my podcast again. I'm now getting ready to start. You know, we have features and intellectual properties. We're going to start making movies again. But I don't want to do anything until I can pay my people.
Right. So it's that's totally smart. I mean, you know, the thing is that you can burn favors.
My dog in the background now.
Your dog now? Okay, my dog and my cat, they're like running all over the place. It's like insanity. But it's only favors. Everybody does favors, right? Mm-hmm. If you pay them $250,
like your home team.
Right? But at $250 a day, which is what I paid people on Lola, everybody knows this. $250 a day. If you were the art director and if you were the DP, it didn't matter. You got $250 a day. But that only goes so far. That was a personal project. For the next thing, hopefully, I will have more money to pay them more. If not, I will build that into my budget. And if I need to. Like my budget was originally before Corona happened was I was going to fundraise $5,000, and the reason is because I wanted to see if people were interested in the story. It was almost like a market test because you know I come from marketing, so I wanted to see if people interested in the story other than my friends, right? And the other money, the other $5,000, because my budget was going to be $10,000, was going to come from my pocket because I was working. So I was only going to raise the other half. Corona happened and somebody had already sent me $1,000 check. Wow. So then I'm like, holy crap, I can't pull back now. I got to do it. I got to go all in. It's because I feel the weight of the responsibility of if somebody gives you money, you better freaking deliver.
Especially when somebody busts out the checkbook and was like, put 3 zeros behind it.
Yeah. That like my first big check was $1,000. I mean, we raised close to 20 grand during Corona. Second phase, we did it in 3 phases. The second phase of the fundraising campaign, we raised 150% within 3 days.
Nice.
3 days. And we went way over. But it was Corona. It was the peak Corona. Like we couldn't even get PPE. You know, we couldn't, it was peak Corona. People don't understand the difficulty it was to film. Everybody was watching. Yeah,
you couldn't fuck it up.
We were SAG. We created the first SAG, what was it called? The plan, the COVID plan, because we were the first production, and there was no. The PGA hadn't put out their plan yet. Nobody had put out their plan. We created the first plan. Like it was crazy. It was crazy. I can't believe we freaking did it. Like we whatever happens with the film, which I think is going to be fully positive. I mean, we got the partnership with the National Women's Health Coalition Center. I'm sorry. I mean, that in itself is amazing. But we had actors stuck out of the country because it couldn't get in because of COVID. We had one, I think it was a scriptie that didn't want to do it because of COVID. So we had to replace her. I mean, there were so many freaking problems because of COVID. Mm. It was insanity.
I had an issue with some people that were making COVID films during COVID, but it was here locally, and it was
Uh-huh.
because it was like non-paid, it was non-everything. It was just like, hey, come out and come help me make my web series,
Uh,
and I was like, nobody needs to die, nobody needs to die so that your shitty web series can get made.
right.
And I actually had them on the podcast and we talked about it and about the safety. So it was a whole thing making
It
movies
was
during that.
a thing. People don't
Yeah.
understand. There was like people that, and we were SAG. It was like my
Mhm.
first SAG production. And so I knew they could show up at any time. Once you're SAG, there's you have the address. We had a Film LA permits, like $1,200. God damn them, they're so freaking expensive. We had insurance. We did a legit
Nice.
film. We
Not
did
to
the
brag.
whole thing.
Not to brag, Anna, but my first feature film, Blacklisted, was a SAG ultra low
Good
budget.
for you. Well,
and,
you brag. Hello. It's okay. You're Latino. There's not that many of us that do it right. And you know that.
and we made 118 San Diego actors SAG eligible. Because
Stop it.
because that's how many people I had in the fucking cast, and I was writing the scenes week to week. Like I had an overall idea, but it was my first feature, so I learned so much because I
You
fucked
send
up
me
so
the
much.
link. I want to see it. Oh my god,
Yeah, you
that's
can.
crazy. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
totally crazy.
118 SAG
celebrate.
eligible. Well, it was a
People
few
do
years
not
ago.
realize the work. Anytime
Yeah.
any film gets made,
Yeah,
it's a celebration. But if you do
absolutely,
it and you do it right, holy shit, that's like
yeah.
that's amazing. That's feather on your cap amazing, because it's not easy to make a film. It's
Yeah.
really, really crazy expensive, especially if you wrote it, if you directed, if you produced it, which is when it's indie, we do a lot.
Everything.
You know,
At this level, the
you do
director's the
everything.
producer.
The
The director's the
that's a
casting
great
director.
thing. The great thing about working on real films like I have too is that you get to see how real Hollywood works.
Mhm.
So you can implement a lot of what you see on your sets. And I say this all the time. It's a privilege because some people have only worked on indie stuff, or Latino stuff and low budget stuff. So they don't know what it's like to have a multi-million-dollar film where you have like the third meal that you have to order, or you have like the lead actress. Like I was able to get, like, for one of my actresses, they do for the big films, the lead actress or actor, they usually do a gift for cast and crew.
Mhm.
So, and they get a meal for cast and crew, like something, special,
Or like
right?
like a food truck or something like that.
Something,
Yeah.
right? So they don't get it. We get it. We give them options, and then they're like, okay, I like this, right? So everything from contracting a Filipino dessert bar that I made pushed for one of my actresses to secure. So we have ways of including representation in more way than one. I included like a woman-owned coffee car one time too. Like, so it's like wink wink. Yeah, it's a coffee cart, but it's also owned by a woman. So if you're smart,
Yeah, there's ways to do it.
so many ways that you like. Even if you're TA, even if you're just an intern, because the first time I got real film set, I shadowed. So I asked question, I watched. So for everyone, except for Lola because of COVID, but for every one of my shoots, like the last shoot that I did, I don't know if you saw that, but I did a call out.
Yeah,
for
you had
Mexican
somebody.
American.
Yeah, you had somebody come out.
I
thought that was fucking awesome.
always, yeah, I do that all the time because the problem is that many times people screw up and make major mistakes because they've never been on a set that is managed professionally, properly. Because they've never been around. And it's not to offend anyone by no means, but it does make a difference, because the reason I was able to get more work from that project is because they saw how I ran the set. They saw the professional crew. They saw what we were able to do. There was nobody running around ragged. There was no trash on the floor. There was like everything ran on time. Everything ran on budget. The communication was super professional. And I wanted to make sure that the shadow saw that. So when she goes to other sets, she'll know like, oh, this is how it's done. And
that's not how Anna Lydia did it.
I like imagine. I was like, people know. You run my sets. It's like I
No,
brought I brought binders to sets. Nobody really likes binders in the film
oh God.
world.
No,
It's
well,
hilarious. You guys don't
I,
like binders. I don't get it.
I
I
don't
do,
mind binders.
but it's not a thing.
No,
Binders
no,
are not a thing in the film world at
no, no,
all.
no.
You know, you have like little folders with
Mhm.
paper,
I
and
like a
I'm like,
clipboard. I like a
oh,
clipboard.
clipboard. Yeah, there you go.
I need a
I hate that.
clipboard with my schedule that I'm not sticking to, and a copy of my script so that I can make notes and make changes on the go.
Craziness.
And
So
I have
my,
my I'm sorry, my full production team, my assistant director, my production manager, my location managers, and like I said, the backbone of 2 a.m.
right,
Burritos
right.
production team is all Mexican women, by the way. That's my my
We're
Mexican sister,
badass. Well, I'm
my
Mexican
Mexican
American.
sister, yeah, my Mexican American sister, and a bunch of other production people that I know. Like, they do all my paperwork, they do everything. They're the backbone that allows me to be on set. They keep me on schedule. They know when I need breaks. They know when I need to sit down. They know when I need a smoke break. They know everything, and they
Right,
keep me and they allow me to be creative. So
right. That's
knowing when
that's
people are
amazing.
better at other things than you are and letting them
That's
go,
the best way. That's the best.
that's where it becomes a creative. That's when it becomes a collaborative art. You know.
Exactly. And it is. And I tell people all the time when they work with me, and because my professor says this, she's like, you got to leave your stink, or you got to leave your mark on everything you do. So everybody that I work with has to leave their stink, has to leave their mark. I will give them the overall vision. I will give them, the deadline, the budget, whatever. I will give them everything up front. I'm a huge planner. But then
How
I
do
also
you
tell them this: you have to leave your stink. This is not about Analydia. It's not about Analydia Productions. I want you to be happy with the end result
how
of
do you
what we
feel?
deliver.
How do you feel about this? I know how I feel, but how do you feel when you have an idea about a character, you have an idea about how you want them to play a scene, and then the actor
Mhm.
comes in, and it's very obvious they've done the work, and
Right,
they've made a choice that you not necessarily had thought of, but it doesn't piss you off. It's not necessarily what you wanted, but you're seeing them play, and you're like, is this pissing me off? Because I always like, if an actor comes to set, and even though it might not be something that I envisioned, if when I see, all right, let me see what you're bringing to this, and they play it
right,
out, and then I say, you know what? It's not specifically what I want or what I imagined, but as long as it doesn't like piss me off or like make me think like, no, 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 that's not it. I like to try to let them keep part of that, right? Do you ever become too possessive where you're like, no, it has to be my way, or how do you collaborate with actors specifically, when you know that at least they've put in the work and made choices even though they're not necessarily what you envisioned?
right. Well, everybody directs differently. There's not a best or a wrong way to do things. How I directed my first few films and how I direct now is an entirely different process. I'm huge on planning. I'm huge on
Right.
table reads. I'm huge on, obviously for Lola, we
So
couldn't
there's
do
there's 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 not going to be
rehearsals.
there's no ambiguity when you get on set because you've already done the work with them previously, so that
There
when
is,
you get on set.
obviously there is, like, because the energy, the chemistry of the room, whatever makes people do things that they normally wouldn't. And it's really hard to explain to people that are not filmmakers what the energy is
Right.
like when you're on set. You can't explain it. You're creating something. It's almost like giving birth to something, and it's the initial part of going into labor, because obviously the baby's not born until you deliver it, right? So I also want my actors to leave their stink. I'll explain to them what, I have character bios for everyone. Everybody knows, like, where their character lives, where they went to college, what they do for, a career, what kind of relationship they have. I mean, I go psychographics, like in they call it bio in the film world, but in the PR marketing world, it's psychographics. So I go very deep on the psychographics, explain that to my actors, and then I'll let them go with that, and then I also make adjustments as we do things, but then I also ask them, does this feel natural to the character? Does this feel natural to this scene? Does this feel natural to this situation? I'll ask them, how would the name of the character do this? Not them as the actor, because when they're on my set, they're not an actor. They're that character. When they're on set, when they're offside or we're discussing the role, it's a little bit different. When they're on set, like Lola, I'm like, what would Lola do right now? And if the actor pushed back on something, like she pushed back on one of the dresses, right? And she's like, oh, this feels too much like one of the characters in Sex and the City. So then I explained to her why the importance of this costume is and what it means and what it signifies in the scene or whatever. She put it on. She was like, it was the best dress ever. It was perfect. So I pushed back where but most of the time, all of my actors are very very professional. They're trained. I think training has a lot to do with it, because you get adjustments. If the characters in my stories or in my film have a relationship, I introduce them immediately, and I encourage them to talk to each other, to see each other, to go out to lunch or what have you. So they build that type of relationship that they're supposed to have on camera. So Sonia and Marlene had never met before until I brought them together. But I make sure that it's not going to be authentic that they're friends if they haven't established a friendship before. And I think another director did this. I think the person that did, she's a female director, and I've been doing this for the last 3 films. And she talked about actually having her 2 lead characters renting the same apartment and living together for 3 months or something like that.
Wow,
before the film.
that's intense.
Yeah. So that's something that I would, once I get to that budget, I would probably do that as well. Like if somebody's supposed to be like, together with somebody else, I'd probably send them on the vacation once I have the budget. But my actors aren't dummies. They're not, drones. I expect them to give, to give life to the character that we're creating together, because together with direction, together with lighting and art direction, together with a costume, that all plays into the character. So I would never just, again, when I started directing, especially if you come from a commercial world, it's this way, period. That's just what it is. So there is a place for that. But since all of my stories tend to be more like personal in nature, not like, science fiction or whatever, which is an entire, well, actually, no, I take it back. If you want that very personal interaction and personal, like if you want to feel part of the film, like you're not seeing it from the outside in, like that's one thing that I didn't appreciate about Roma, and I hate it, is that I always felt like I was spying on everybody. And it's not the distance of the camera. It's not like what lens you picked. It's the way you choose to direct. And you can tell that these people were directed heavily versus my actors and other actors. I think Woody Allen, and I hate bringing him up, but he's a twisted man, incredible director. He directs in such a way that it brings that out in people. So and then plus I don't do several takes. My husband right now is working on a show where the director is doing like 13, 14 takes. I would, unless something happens like on set, like that I have to do that, I would never go beyond 3 to 4 takes. Yeah, I've never, ever gone. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to stress my actors out. I don't want them to feel like they're not doing a good job, that they're not in the right character in the right moment. And it has a lot to say about my planning. And then obviously in the moment, there was another director, and I can't remember his name, and I hate forgetting, but I think it's because it's late, that he has his like breakdown of the scenes and the blocking and everything. But then when he gets to set, if something comes to him, he works with a team that can change things around quickly to make that happen. So I'm between that director and John Bonhomme, who like plans everything out, but then also feels the vibe of that moment and of the story and of what we're trying together to create and to show the world. Because I want people to get that emotional journey. Like if you don't remember anything else about my films, it's like you'll remember the color, you'll remember the costumes, but most importantly, you'll remember the feeling you had when you watched my films. And to me, that's probably one of the most important things.
I really like the leave your stink. I think that's interesting.
Olivia Stank, yeah.
Yeah, I think I've never I guess the thing for me is I'll use specific deliveries of dialogue or words or references that they might not understand, but that are important to me and that I'll play off of later on in the script. So the only thing that I don't like is when actors try to paraphrase or try to like change lines too much, especially if there's something specific that I want. And I'm not necessarily the biggest planner because, because like I said,
everybody has a style.
Yeah,
everybody has a style. Yeah.
I guess on set, I'm more of a consensus builder, which is also my management style away when I was in my other industry. But I think it takes all types and it takes all different.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I'm not, but I don't write. The dialogue that I write is very natural. It feels very like you're listening to somebody that as they're talking versus something that is based, I don't know, on Shakespeare, and it is, like a period piece or whatever, where you absolutely cannot change the dialogue. So as I go through table reads, I will ask them, if this does not sound natural, as long as you don't change the meaning or the intent of this line, let's play with it if we need to. And if you see that the actors, at least for me, a sign is to make a change on the writing, because language is alive. Language is a live thing. At least for me, for these type of stories set in reality, is I can't be a stickler, because if somebody has a problem saying something, there's a reason why they're not saying it that way. So it gives me pause to slightly change it.
Yeah.
As long as the meaning is still there.
No. I said I've only, and this is a cardinal sin for most directors, which is never say, here, I'll show you. I've only done that one time, and that was because the actor specifically requested, and I was like, "Are you?"
But again, if that works with you and it works with your actors, I think that all these exactly. Like there's, I don't know if it's age or I don't know if it's experience. But and I don't know if it's because I've been on several sets and seen a lot of directors, like multi-million-dollar directors, and seeing how they direct. But like you said, most importantly, it takes all types. So I don't think that there's one way better than another. It's what works for you and the story. And it doesn't mean that you're married to that style forever, never, 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 and you're never going to change it. You may change it. You may not. This might be your trademark. This is the way I do things, period, end of story. For me, what I love introducing my actors that have relationships with each other. I love including them. I love setting them up like and do that, all of my actors, and taking them out ever. That is my style. Other people just want them fresh. They want them on set fresh. They don't want, all this other stuff. If it works for them, totally cool.
Do you?
But do you? If it works and you're getting the work done and you're creating something that's beautiful and that's what you wanted and people are getting what you want out of it, then absolutely keep doing what you're doing. And if not, I feel that just like language changes, creativity changes as well, and you should allow yourself the opportunity to change, to best, deliver what you want to give the world, to best deliver what you want to give birth to. Because unlike other industries, sales or marketing or PR, like I have some of the clips and some of the stories are still online. And I still have my big deck for Disney because I'm so proud of it. I still have my big Disney deck. It's in a big box. So one day when I'm famous and they have, an exhibit about me, they'll open it up. Like I already see it in my head. But I think that in general, like artists, we leave something behind. We do leave our children. So everything you do, you should do it with the intent of somebody's going to see it 20, 30 years after I'm dead. Are they going to appreciate it? And maybe because I don't have
Absolutely.
children and I'm not going to have children, I take it a little bit. Eva DuVernay says this. She literally calls each of her films her children. I say the same thing about my projects. Everything I do, everything I write what I want, obviously, and I write what I care about, obviously. But if somebody were to find even shit from 10 years ago that's crap, they will see that my intention was always there, that there's always been a through line through everything that I do, that it's always been to elevate, representation, that it's always been to elevate the voices of women, specifically Mexican American, that it always was work that was intended to be produced beautifully and thoughtfully. And that if and when, I get my big film, which I think I will, I know I will, that they'll see that consistency of like, this is the Anna
Totally.
Lydia stamp. Her work is very, like my classmate said, very feminine. Fine, I'll take it. It is very feminine. And that's okay. That's totally okay. That's my style.
Absolutely. And as somebody who grew up, my entire waking life thinking about telling stories and making movies, who went to film school, dropped out of film school, had an entire career outside of the film industry. And 10 years ago, which is when we started, because my production company is on its 10 years.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
10 years ago, my writing partner, Brian, said he quit his like $100,000 a year job in San Francisco. And he's like, dude, we've been talking about making movies so fucking long. I'm quitting my job. I got some money saved. I'm going to move into your house. I'm going to stay on the couch and we're going to start making movies. And literally since that point, I stopped talking about making movies and I started making movies. So it is my art. It is my love. It is what I'm passionate about. I've been doing it for 10 years. I'm going to do it till the day I die.
I know. Somebody was asking me when I was going to retire. And I'm like, I haven't even thought about it. I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think you retire when you're an artist. I just think
it's an art.
You do things differently.
It's hard though, because it's like, sorry, I didn't.
It's okay. Like my husband just walked in the door. He was expected to come in at 4 a.m.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's actually exciting that he's here early because he's working on this show. No, I know this conversation is like people are going to get tired of us.
No, it's fine. No, I wanted to say though that that like I said, I've learned a lot talking to you, and like I said,
thank you. And I appreciate you. It's very lovely to have a conversation and to have a dialogue about so many different topics.
I just love talking process and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing. I really do.
And like I said, once you make that movie, you need a second unit director. I got you. Don't try.
You never know. I take my duckies everywhere I go. Okay. For sure.
I did want to touch a little bit about on Lola before because I have a bracket.
Thank you.
Yeah, which I love the color palette, which you mentioned before. As a fat dude that once pitched a sitcom about a group of friends that met each other in fat camp.
That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah, I actually have a pilot about but then we were writing it at a time when you could still openly make fun of fat people, but now and we were big. So my thing growing up in terms of like what fat shaming is and thing is like we grew up in an era where it was like sort of you earned your stripes being able to take jokes about your stuff like that.
Right.
And my thing was always, if it's funny, I'm okay with it. You can make fun of me. You can say, yes, Lou, I am going to finish that. Or you can say something where it's like, where I find the humor in it, in which case okay. But I think we're in a much more sensitive time where things like that aren't.
Again, I think that we have to think about what we put out into the world a little differently because right now people are not just viewing it once a week and then it goes away and then we might never see it unless so it's going to live on. Our stuff is going to live on. So we do have to be very conscious of what we put out into the world.
YouTube is forever.
Yeah, YouTube is forever. All that stuff is forever. Yeah, I think it's even more, people are going to forget if you were a jerk at a restaurant unless they
Mhm.
record it. Then they won't forget.
Yeah,
Then
yeah, yeah.
it's like forever. Like if they weren't
I,
there,
I
they're not going to remember.
I thankfully made a lot of my blunders and embarrassing moments pre cell phone cameras and stuff like that, which I'm happy for. But like I
I'm so
said,
happy I was single before recording. Like I was telling my husband, I was like, oh my God, the drama and the stuff that women worry about now. It's like, I think we had it worse,
Mhm,
in the dating world than they do. But
mhm.
the thing that amplifies it is the fact that it's on like social media and Instagram and everything else. So it becomes like super public. Like the fact that you have to put on Facebook that you're
Mhm.
with someone, like who did that before? Like
Yeah,
nobody did that before. I think that now it like amplifies something that was even harder back then, but it makes it worse because it's now in the public eye. But it's so.
but I will reach out to my people at San Diego Latino, because I
Oh,
think your
thank
film is
you.
incredible. So I think
Oh, thank you.
they
I'm
have
so glad you appreciated it. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah,
it was a
absolutely.
story. Like I said, I started working on Lola when I was at Art Center. And we did, this is one of the things I miss about film school, is we would workshop ideas and we would workshop concepts and we would workshop stories. And this was one of those workshop stories. And it was based on my own personal experience of going to the doctor and the doctors ignoring
Yeah,
me.
ignoring me.
And yeah, and to the point where when on one time I had emergency gallbladder surgery, another time I was walking around with a broken ankle for over a year, to the point that I only had like one ligament holding my foot. So I had to have a reattachment. This is not something that I know wouldn't have happened to a white and a thin woman. And even I have the best insurance. I have motion picture insurance. I have the best doctors. I'm ambiguous enough to where, and not fat to the point where people are still okay with making fun of. And yet I had all these problems. So it started with that. And somebody in film school, younger, had said that it had happened to them. And then I did even more research. I asked more women of color, white women, all ages, and almost all of them had either a personal experience or somebody that had gone through it. So again, market research. I'm like, oh shit, I better do this. So the script started one way, and the plan was to shoot it in 2019. I couldn't find Lola, and
Yeah,
Lola, yeah. And again, because you've cast before,
mhm.
finding actors is like finding a needle in a haystack.
At one point, I was having trouble finding a Mexican actress in San Diego.
Yeah,
At one point, I was
yeah,
having trouble finding Latina actresses in San Diego.
yeah.
Like,
But people don't understand that it's not just a good actor.
right,
It's
the
not
right
just
one.
a Latino actor. It's an actor that can play this role and can play with all these other people also, and has good chemistry and is believable with other people. Like I'll literally put like photos together. Like, okay, does this person look like they can date this person, could be friends with this person, that could live in this life? Again, I did this because I've seen this happen. I've seen this process with larger film sets with a lot of money. That it's not just like, let's get this actor. But if there's this actor, everybody's built around one actor. So then suddenly these other people may not work. So I saw close to 100 people. And then I directed a play at the Short and Sweet Festival. And I stayed to watch all the different plays to support my fellow playwrights and directors. And one of the last plays that I saw was Marlene Luna played the lead. And I remember coming home and telling my husband I saw Lola. And he's like, yeah, right, whatever, because I hadn't found her, right? And I called a couple friends. I found Lola. They didn't believe me. Next day I went back. Sunday I went back. I saw her 3 times. And I was sure this is her. So at the end of the 3rd time, I asked for her contact information and if I could reach out because I had a role that I wanted to talk to her about. I sent her Meeting Brown and I sent her the script, and it was an entirely different script. I mean, the intention was still the same, but it was an entirely different script. And she liked it, and she liked my previous work. And then we set up a meeting in Long Beach. I'll never forget that. and we had coffee, we had sweetbread, and I asked her to be part of it, and she said, yeah, that she'd be honored to. And then once she came on board, then everything happened. Everything like snowballed, like, because I needed that one person to bring everybody else back. Now, Sean, who played her significant other, her boyfriend, I had worked with him on Meeting Brown, and I couldn't find an actor that I liked also. And he hadn't moved to, because this happened during Corona, but he hadn't moved to New Mexico yet. And my DP, who I'd worked with before on previous projects, was like, why don't you call Sean? I think he would be really good in this role. And I'm like, I don't think he'll take it. It's a short now. And at this point, Sean is making much bigger projects. And I called him, he said he'd do it. And I'm like, oh my God, perfect. And then for the friend, I mean, I love Sonia, who plays her friend. And I had worked with her before, and I always say that Sonia needs to have her own sitcom by now. And I'm actually really upset that nobody has
She's real
discovered
bubbly,
her.
really cool.
Lovely, cool, smart. It can like tackle so many different subjects, so many different emotions. The nuances and her body, like she does a lot of body work, is like absolutely incredible. So she, of course, was like, as soon as I called her, she's like, anything, I'll do it, because I love working with her. Sonia's like, I love Sonia. And then I introduced her to Marlene. Couldn't find the nurse. I wanted a very specific type of nurse. A fellow director recommended her. Faith and I actually just went out to lunch last week. We're really close. The doctor, same thing. Another person recommended. The guy at Jason at the farmer's market. Mm-hmm. The other actor that was cast got COVID. So I had to recast him. Yeah. Like within 2 weeks. And he worked out beautifully. The Olivia, who played his girlfriend, Mimi, she's the producer's daughter, and she's in a conservatory in London. So I got really lucky that she was in town. The four voices in the dream sequence. Else with the short hair, I had worked with her in my PR life, so she's seen me like transition. And then the other girls, we found them through social media, because 2 people got stuck in Australia because of COVID.
Wow. Oh yeah, you said that.
Yeah. So it just worked out magically. Like everything, the cast worked out magically.
Once it starts to come together, it's like a beautiful thing. Things start falling into place. Yeah. My problem is that usually during the casting process, and this happened both in Slapworthy, my rom-com, which I do want to send you because I want you to watch it, and in Blacklisted, which you talk, which is I would audition people and they weren't right for the, and I always audition people with only a couple of roles, and then I fill out the other roles, because I like to center my attention on a couple of, just to see how they act and stuff like that, and then I'm like, okay, they could fit this other role that I had in mind.
Right.
But I would have people come in for a part, and they would impress me so much because of the choices that they made that I was like, oh, I'm writing. I always end up writing extra parts and adding to it because I'm like, I want this person in my movie. One thing I wanted to mention before we get off the Lola topic is that I've had that exact same conversation with a doctor, because I went into an emergency room because I wasn't feeling too good, and they're like, are you diabetic? And I was just like, like I'm 300 plus pounds. What are the chances I'm not diabetic? I was like, let's just assume that I am, but I'm not. But I'm just saying, like that hit me when I was watching it. I was like, okay, this is cutting to the core right now of what this is. There wasn't a lot of let's gently look at this. It was like boom, boom, boom. This is what's happening. This is a real problem. This is an experience that many people have. Maybe not your skinny ass,
right,
but many people have. And I thought it was very well done. So again,
a lot of Jason, actually, he read the script and he fell in love with Lola. And also my art director, who came from Paris to work on my film, he bills thousands of dollars a day. He only did $250, no prep for me. And they all fell in love with Lola because they all got the message that it really came down to her loving herself in order to move forward. Like sometimes some people figure it out. They don't need a major moment to happen. But for Lola, what she needed was to almost like kiss death, to be in front of death and to come out and to figure out that she needed to put herself first, and then everything else was going to fall into place. So everything ends on an uplifting, and you notice the color palette, like it changes from the beginning to the end. Her wardrobe changes from beginning to end. The way we film it, shot it from beginning to end, it changes. Like that's why I didn't submit it when it was in process. You know how some people can submit your films. Well, it's not finished yet. So because the color has so much to do with the story as much the music as well. Like the song is an original. It was composed for us, the final song. The music, all the music was original. We got a composer to do it, Audio Brew. They were incredible. So yeah, it wasn't just a labor of love. It was an intentional piece that I knew that I wanted. Not just people that were of size, but also people that are at that place where they've either already been there or they haven't gone through that, and maybe this will inspire them to get into themselves a little bit more.
Absolutely, and I think it was well done, and I hope and I wish you the best on its continued
Thank
festival.
Thank you so much.
All right, we got one last thing that we do, but I want to thank Miss Ana Lydia Monaco for coming in. Make sure you guys check her out, Ana Lydia Monaco or Ana Lydia Productions. You can find her on Twitter as well, Ana Lydia everywhere. Follow her for her hot takes and mixing it up on the Twitter streets with whoever wants the smoke. I want to make sure that if you guys are watching this far, make sure that you are following us on Facebook.com/2mburrito, Twitch.tv/2mburrito, where I do my interviews. I also do a little gaming once in a while. And to watch our old films and our old interviews and stuff, you can always go to youtube.com/2amburrito. A couple of the organizations that I work with that I like to promote on my pods, communitythroughhope.org. It's a community organization here in San Diego helping people that are homeless or are close to being homeless. Arts for a Better Tomorrow with my good friend actor Jose Yenke from Traffic and other films. He's actually the one that did the voiceover for Ladron, which is what changed the movie because he gave it that gravitas, that kind of voice. And if you guys are thinking about buying a puppy, make sure you don't buy a puppy. Instead, go to WeSaveThePuppy.org, support them, and rescue some dogs. They also help people who need healthcare for the animals. So we talked about everything from In the Heights to colorism to racism to Mexican American culture versus Native Mexican culture to Colombian to all over Latinx things. We talked about your movie. We talked about your experiences in film school. There's only one last thing that I like to do with each of my guests, and that is something that I like to call the bracket bit.
All right, boys and girls, you know what that sound means. It's time for bracket bit. Bracket bit. Bracket bit. Woo, 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 woo. Bracket bit. Bracket bit. Woo, 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 woo.
Fireside Chats.
All right, it is getting close to the end of the interview, which means I get to light my joint because I no longer have to worry about making sure I answer questions correctly. And Ana Lydia, we've talked about the broad range of color that is part of the Latino, Latinx, Latin culture. We are not all one look. We do not all look one way. We don't all have one type of hair. And there are Latinx and Latinx stars of all colors, shape, sizes from all other ethnicities. So tonight's bracket bit for you is called Latinx All-Stars. I'm going to give you two Latinx actors, celebrities, or comedians, whatever it is, and you're going to pick which one moves on to the next round. This is a bracket, which means I create the bracket from Maximum Pain, but your choice to create it and how to answer it is up to you. So the science is up to you. The bracket is up to me. So whichever reason you want, you could pick which one of these two you would want to put in your next movie, which one of these two you would rather have lunch with tomorrow if you could, which one you think is the bigger icon, which filmography you like the best. It doesn't matter. But you make the choice, I make the questions. Are you ready?
Okay, go for it.
All right, in our first bracket, we have J-Lo, who recently got together with, and if there's any of these people that you feel you have a take on, this is what allows us to kind of have the conversation about them while we're doing this. But J-Lo recently recoupled with Mr. Ben Affleck, and who is obviously Latina, or Tristan Wilds from The Wire. He's also a musician. He played Michael in season 4 of The Wire. He's been in, I think, the Beverly Hills 90210 remake. He's an actor, rapper. He's a triple threat. But the first bracket and the first matchup is between him and J-Lo.
I worked with J-Lo before. I love J-Lo, so I'm gonna say J-Lo.
Mhm. She's a number one seed for a reason. J-Lo moves on. Melissa Fumero from Brooklyn Nine-Nine or Damian Bashir?
Damian Bashir, without a
Damian Bashir moves
question.
on. Ana de Armas or Cesar
Oh.
Romero? Now,
Anna, Knives Out, yeah.
I always say this, and it's because my girlfriend doesn't listen to the stream. But if I was in a car with my girlfriend and Ana de Armas was waiting at the bus stop, I'd make my girlfriend sit in the back seat while I pick her up.
No, she's an incredible actress. Oh my god,
She's
she's so good.
She's beautiful. She's incredible. She's a Rosario Dawson or Freddie Prinze.
Oh, that one's hard. But you know what? Freddie hasn't done anything in a while, but I think it would be. I want to see him again.
Mhm.
I really want to see him again. Yeah, I would work with him.
Freddie Prinze.
Yeah.
He could be like your John Travolta in Pulp Fiction. You know, somebody that people don't think of, and all of a sudden they get a star turned in your next.
No,
movie.
I was actually thinking about him because my husband loves his father, and so sometimes I get to watch whatever in the Man and
Chico and the Man.
Yeah, Chico and the Man. Yeah.
All right, we got Eva Mendes or Benicio del Toro.
Oh my God! Imagine working with Benicio.
Mm.
Yeah, Mr. Benicio.
Benicio del Toro, America Ferrara, or John Leguizamo.
I love America. Her best role was Real Women Have Curves. That's the best coming of age film. I want to work with her.
America Ferrara, Michelle Rodriguez, or, and this is a true story, my imaginary friend when I was growing up was called Montalban. So Ricardo Montalban or Michelle Rodriguez.
Oh my God! Well, he's dead though. In
Well,
my
I mean-
imaginary movie.
Well, yeah, and this I create the bracket, you solve it. Whatever science you want to put, you can bring
If I
him back
could,
as a
if I could
clone.
go back in time to bring back Ricardo Montalban, holy crap, that would be amazing.
All right, and is that what your choice is?
Yeah, Ricardo.
Michelle's got enough of that Fast Five money. She don't need that. She don't need the part. She's cool. Jimmy
I don't
Smith.
know.
Jimmy Smits, recently in the Heights, or Tessa
Yeah.
Thompson.
What was the last thing Tessa was in?
Thor or the Avengers. I guess the Avengers.
Oh
movie.
yeah, superhero stuff. Yeah, so Jimmy goes into his characters. Yeah, I do Jimmy.
Jimmy. Oscar Isaac or Zoe Saldana.
Oh, working with Oscar. Yeah.
Oscar Isaac.
Yeah, let's do Oscar. Oh, he would be great.
Desi Arnaz, another one that we're gonna have to bring back from the dead, or Gina Rodriguez.
Gina.
Gina Rodriguez moves on. Mario Lopez, and I only include him into this bit because he's from Chula Vista, where I live, and Christian Serratos, aka
Christian Serrato. So, yeah, has range. Lots of range.
Vegan Selena, as they call her. Eric Estrada.
You know what? But she has range. Honestly, I admire her taking on that role. It might have not been her best role ever, but I admire her for it.
Plus, Netflix shortchanged it, like gave it a third of the
They
budget.
did not. $2 million in Mexico. You know how much that is?
Well, I know the casting director of the show because they shoot right across right down the block here in
We can have a separate conversation on that because $2 million in Mexico is millions upon millions upon millions of pesos.
Yeah, I mean, part of my always struggle is that we always have offers, come film down here, come film, blah, 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 this and that. It's kind of like a very San Diego problem about whether or not you should go shoot in TJ to actually save some money. But Christian Serratos absolutely has the range. And
he has range. He was just not cast. He was not directed well. Her wardrobe sucked. Hair sucked. She was set up to fail. I mean, people were going to compare her with J-Lo on her iconic role, and it
was going to be tough anyway. And I do know probably about a half dozen because they cast probably about a dozen San Diego actors for like minor roles because they were close by and stuff like that. Eric Estrada. My Eric Estrada story is always when he was in Chips and he went down to Venezuela where I was living at the time. They had this promotion where he was going to come in. They said, all right, Mr. Estrada, we got a motorcycle for you. You're going to come around this corner and then just pull up right here. And this is where we're going to do the press conference and everybody's going to take your picture. And he was like, Yeah. I don't know how to drive a motorcycle. That was all TV.
Oh, stop it! He didn't.
He didn't know how to drive a motorcycle.
So it was always an extra. I never knew that.
It was always on a. It was always on a. It was either a stuntman or it was always on a flatbed truck that was getting pulled. Like they're like, yeah, we got the motorcycle. You're gonna come on the motorcycle. You're gonna come around the corner, and he was like, I don't drive a motorcycle, dude.
That
That's
is
TV.
crazy. I did not know that. Every time I think of Eric Estrada, I think of him and being in that Mexican telenovela, that really cheesy Mexican telenovela. Oh my God, Dos Amores, un camino, un camino. I forgot what it was called, but it was so cheesy. Rita, I would work with Rita in a heartbeat.
I mean, she is sort of getting like a half a pass for her little thing that happened the other day, but you know, she's old. She's an icon.
But you know what? She I think how she said it was not the best way of saying it.
No, it was
but
very
her
dismissive.
intention, yeah, it was very dismissive. But what she was trying to say was what I said, which was, yes, absolutely, share your truth, but because of the importance of this weekend and the power that one tweet may have, share it on Monday. Like, absolutely. Yeah. Like, that's just the way she said it. You know, she said it like somebody of her age.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
you know, somebody of her age talks that way. So, but
next week. Say it next week. All right. Well, she moves on past to the next round. All right. We have Diego Luna or Sofia Vergara.
Oh, Diego. I want to work with Diego.
All right. Edward James Olmos or Rosie Perez.
Did I tell you this? I have to tell you this. So a friend of mine got to work on the LA Latino Film Festival, and she's so excited. She posted she got a photo with Edward James Olmos, and I responded. I was like, "Oh my God, this is so horrible." I thought about it after the fact, but I don't think she got it like that. I was like, "Oh, you got your official LA Latino Edward James Olmos photo," because everybody in LA gets a photo.
Edward James Olmos, yeah, I've seen a lot of festival pictures.
Yes. Oh my God. But or Rosie Perez. You know what? I want to see Edward act again. I want to work with him.
Anthony Quinn or and this is, you know, Anna Taylor-Joy.
Oh, if I could work with Anthony Quinn.
Anthony Quinn? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's make that happen in this bracket. And the last part, Danny Trejo and the ageless Selma Hayek.
I know, ageless, right? Like she drinks baby's blood. I don't know what she does. She does not age.
They're like she's playing a goddess in the Eternals. You're like, yeah, check.
Yeah, of course she's playing the Eternals. Like her skin is like, you know, when they do those like close up photos of like people without makeup, perfection. Like there's not a line. I mean, she must have the best plastic surgeons, or she just doesn't age. Like I don't wrinkle. I'm like another weirdo that doesn't work. I don't know.
That's that clean living, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. I don't eat bad food.
Danny Trejo.
Yeah, that one's hard. Danny Trejo lives in Sylmar, where I grew up.
Yeah, plus you could get some probably get some free tacos out of it too as well.
Oh my God, Trejo's tacos and his donut place and his coffee, legit. Oh my God, so good. This one is hard. This is one of the hardest one. I usually know like which one.
The bracket bid is created to cause maximum pain. So this.
But you know what? I already got J-Lo and I already got Anna, and I already got. Yeah, so let's do Danny.
Danny Trejo moves on. I can't, you know, Danny leaving Selma behind in the first. That's an upset. That's a first round upset right there. Danny Trejo beating Selma Hayek, but he is machete. All right, we move on to the second round.
Quiet.
All right, we got J-Lo versus Damian Bashir.
Oh shit.
Now you've made your first round decisions. Now you must live with the consequences and face what happens in the second round matchup.
Oh my God, you're horrible. I really want to work with Damian. I really I would love to freaking work with him.
Ana de Armas.
Make it happen, universe. Make it happen. I wanna direct them.
All right, or Freddie Prinze.
If Damian and Ana were in the same movie, imagine. That would be, oh my God, that would be some freaking amazing, like a familia movie, like my crazy ass, like twisted family in Mexico movie.
That'd be awesome.
Ana, let's do Ana.
All right, Benicio or America.
Benicio will always win.
Ricardo or Jimmy?
I'm gonna say Jimmy just because he's alive.
Oscar or Gina?
Oscar. Oh my God, why is my stuff all men?
I wasn't gonna say anything.
Oh my God, that is crazy.
I wasn't gonna say anything, but you made your choices in the first round. Usually by the time people get to the bottom of the
I
bracket.
take it back. I just realized it. I'm like, oh my God, that's a lot of men.
They
That's
were
a
all
hell of a lot of men.
there were all male-female matchups in the first round here.
You did do that. Oh my God, I just realized that you did.
Just an FYI. That's why I thought, because around this part, people usually start looking back and they're like, what kind of choices have I made? Do I see any themes? That's why I thought Salma Hayek was a weird one, because I was like, it's kind of male heavy. All right, but we make our choices. We move on. It's just a bracket. It's not a science experiment. There's not going to be reviews and periodic pieces. We got Cristian Serratos or Rita Moreno.
You know what? I want to give Cristian another chance. I want a director.
Diego Luna or Edward James Olmos.
Oh, Diego.
Anthony Quinn or Danny Trejo.
I think Danny because he's alive.
All right. And we move on here. Damian or Ana de Armas.
Oh my God, I hate you. Okay, now it's getting bad.
This is the last. Oh no, we should have two women left in the bracket here. She's one of the two.
I gotta do Ana.
Are you doing that because you want to make sure
No,
you get some?
No, I would want both. I'll be honest. I would leave this as is right now. Like if I wouldn't move anywhere. Like if I could work with all of these people, like even the first bracket, obviously, but these people in particular, these actors, hell yeah.
So, okay,
all of them. I would work with all of them. Like
okay, hold on, I got it. We got it right here. Okay, so Diego Luna and Ana de Armas are engaged, right? Does that work for you?
Yeah.
Okay. Or it's either or her, maybe Anna and Oscar Isaac. That's the other casting option.
No, he's a little too old for her.
That's right. So Diego Luna and Ana de Armas are engaged, right? So they fly down to Mexico to meet the family, right? And
God.
Danny Trejo is the crazy uncle, right? That like picks him up at the airport, like on a donkey or something, or like on a lifted truck somewhere, and he thinks he's being kidnapped or whatever, or maybe she flew ahead and then he got there, and then the rest of it writes itself, Benicio. Damian.
Oh my God, I want to work with them. I don't want to go on from this point. This is like I want to work with all of them. I mean, I wanted to work with all of them before, but like this is like I just need another woman, like two other women.
We got Salma back here. We can bring her in. Rosie Perez. Rita could be the grandma. She could definitely play that role. We got a lot of options. The whole point of this bracket was that there is so much Latino, Latinx, Latin talent, and they're all different shades, and it's all of us.
Yeah, they're all different shades, and they can all do different things. Except I suck at it as a casting director because I picked more men. I picked more men than women, and it was funny because I had like that immediate like this person, and for whatever reason,
It happens. Don't worry about it. No, it's just a bracket, Lana. It doesn't. But
I'm like, oh my God, what is wrong with me as a woman? I picked all these men.
All right, let's wrap it up. You said Ana de Armas moves on in our imaginary bracket. Benicio or Jimmy Smits?
Benicio.
Who actually shares the screen with Jose Yenke in Traffic. We were talking about that last time. Oscar Isaac and Cristian Serratos.
I want to give Cristian a chance. I want to work with her.
Diego Luna or Danny Trejo?
Who did I pick before as far as men go? Let me see. No, up. Go up. Benicio. Okay, so then I have to pick somebody younger. Okay, go down. Then it would have to be Diego.
All right, these are our final fours in this imaginary bracket where Anna's casting a movie, and she has to make tough choices because the studio says, Anna, we need your casting choices in order so we can see where we can budget it. So give us your number 1 choice and your number 4 choice, and we're down to the last 4. What will it be? Ana de Armas or Benicio del Toro, both 3 named actors.
Oh, I would say
You can only have one in the next movie.
Ana or Benicio. I'm gonna pick a woman. I'll pick Ana.
And Christian or Diego.
Oh my God, Ana and Diego Luna together. That would be fire. That would be fire. Ana and Diego. That would be freaking beautiful.
You got to give
They would
both
be.
of them.
Yeah.
Like I said, they're the couple, and then everybody else is part of their extended crazy family that has to
Right.
that goes down to Mexico.
And you said that they're dating? They're officially dating?
Who?
Did you make that up that Ana and Diego are dating?
No, I said in our fake movie,
Oh,
Ana and Diego are a couple, and they're heading
Mhm.
down to Mexico for to meet their families at a family reunion, and then all these other people are crazy ass uncles, and Danny Trejo is the crazy ass guy that picks them up at the airport. It's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I have been wanting to write something like that because my husband is white, and I'm like, I would love to do. And my brother married a woman from Mexico. Like he went on vacation, and he met her, he brought her back.
Mhm.
So I'm like, I would love to do something like that. Like, kind of sort of like Fools Rush In, but like a modern dramatic take, like not so much comedy, but like really dramatic to bring up all the ugly shit, but in a very like, oh my God, I would love to do that.
You got to
But
throw in a
Ana
couple
and
of jokes. You got to throw in a
well,
couple
yeah,
of
of course
jokes
you
to-
can,
to release
for
the
levity.
tension.
Yeah, you can't do, for levity, you can't have like all drama, and just like in comedy, you can't have all,
Yeah,
jokes.
I saw that.
So Ana and Diego, that would be perfect.
Well, the studio says you can only have one of them.
You see, that's impossible because one is a woman, one is a man. Unless we change the roles or something.
I don't know, but budget-wise, they only have enough money to meet one of their quotes. They
But
might
you
have
know
to go.
what? I'll negotiate. I will negotiate. I'm a very good negotiator. I negotiate.
You're trying to negotiate yourself out of this bracket. The rules of the bracket are said. I create the bracket. You solve it. You solve it. You can't renegotiate the bracket, and this is a long established. We've done 48 of these.
Really, mine has been the longest. This is how you know I freaking negotiate. It's gonna be freaking hard for me to say no. I want them both. So how about this? How about if I get rid of my drone operator and we just buy overhead footage, and we also get rid of, like, instead of doing 6-hour shoot days, we do 5. Like, I'm totally like bringing down the budget. I don't want to get rid of them.
Generic. We're not going to get LaCroix. We're going to get generic seltzer from Bonds.
That's fine. We'll get generic seltzer, and instead of doing like studio trailers, we'll go to the brand down. How about that? Except for the lead actors, I'll get the bigger trailers. Like, I'll negotiate the heck to just get them both. If I could have Ana de Armas and Diego Luna together in a film,
that's a dream matchup.
Has anybody ever put them together or no?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean,
you should keep it. You should keep, like, you should ask other people to see. But I would negotiate the living daylights. Like, I would cut my own.
You cut your own. Hey, that's dedication. All right. I was going to.
Yeah.
That shows some dedication. I was going to have to declare an invalid bracket because of the fact that you refused to give me a final answer. But based on the fact that you are willing to forego,
I'm not going to get paid.
You're not going to get paid. You're going to work overtime, and you're not going to get paid just so you can have Ana de Armas and Diego Luna as your stars. I will
freaking do that.
I will allow it. This is a valid bracket. It's a valid bracket, even though you are not answering the final question. All right. Since you are refusing to answer and we are allowing you to have your bracket as with the final of Ana de Armas and Diego Luna, I will have to finish the bracket myself. And Ana de Armas wins any bracket in my entire life at this moment in time. So she will be she. Plus, I want to be able to tell her, hey, this one time I made you win this bracket. And again, the only reason I'm saying this is because my girlfriend does not listen to my podcast. So I'm okay.
Oh my God, you know our partner. My husband doesn't read my scripts.
Hey, it happens. It happens. It's good. It's good like that. I you know, hey.
I sometimes feel like warm and fuzzy when I hear other people say, "Oh, all the films I've ever done, my partner read every single one of my scripts," and I'm like,
yeah.
He's never read a one. He'll read like little bits, but he won't read the entire script.
No, she's seen like 2 of my movies, and I've gone to. She's reluctantly gone to some premieres and some stuff, but she doesn't. I'm like, that's even better. That's better.
Well, I hardly ever go out. So if I say this all the time, if you see me out in the wild at some writers event or filmmaker event, you need to freaking take my picture if you're lucky, because it's rare that I go to those things. I'll go out with my friends to brunch and dinners and stuff like that, but to see me at filmmaker events, it's like it doesn't happen.
Well,
thank you so much. You've been amazing. I really appreciate you.
I hope you had a good time.
It was fun. It was really fun.
Yeah, and like I said, I do these not only because I like to have interesting conversation with interesting people that I admire, people that I see that are doing interesting things or have a good journey, but also because I used to do a podcast that was called Indie Apocalypse back in the day that was all about indie filmmaking. But this one is just more about just having good conversations with people and just kind of talking about process and people's journeys and stuff like that. So I appreciate the fact that you did 2 hours and 50 minutes.
I cannot believe time flew. I mean, did people even log on for that long, or did they just log on for like a little?
People come in and out. Like it depends. Like Twitter, Facebook, that's all different. And then after that, I get the reports from the podcast from the actual
let me
podcast.
know. I'd like to know. People are
usually
bored.
No, usually I do. I'll figure out how long they listen to, but on the low end, it's usually at least 300 to 500, and then usually the high end is like 3,000 to 5,000. Most are in like the 15 to 2,000 total between all platforms in terms of how many
2,000 people. Well, hello to new 2,000 people.
It depends. Facebook is usually bigger. Twitch usually is later. YouTube is usually like it's the weirdest on YouTube, and then Spotify is usually my most listened to, with Podbean and iTunes as well. So it depends.
Yeah, that's where I listen to stuff is on Spotify.
Yeah. But like I said,
thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Julian Esteban stopped by at the end. Hi, Julian, who I did 2 hours and like 45 minutes with 2 days ago.
Stop it, him too. So I thought I was special. When you
well, you did 251. He did like 237. My longest.
You see, Julian, I won.
My longest was actually like 4.5 hours. So
holy crap! It's like people on Clubhouse. Did they have a job?
I don't get that. But like I said, thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate your time. Yeah, and like I said, it was good to chat to somebody that's in the industry, and you actually did have a lot of really like modern takes on the process of getting to that, and I think I feel a little bit more secure about my path. Just kind of feeling how you. Because I think it was really ingrained in my head that if I'm at 10 years and I don't have an agent and I've only kind of had nibbles from different parts, that I'm doing something wrong. But how you explained it and how you broke it down, really like I got it at that. I got it a little bit
good. I'm so glad. And just remember, even if you have your WGA card, like people that are WGA, I think only 30% of the people with WGA cards are actually working. So even the WGA card does not guarantee 30%. I think it's like 20 to 30% are working at any given time. And even if you're on a show, remember a show job isn't for an entire year. It's some people get started early, like the showrunner, but then the writers don't get started until the room starts, and rooms can be 2 to 3 months. And then after that, you don't have a job. You got to look on for the next job, and then the next job, and then the next job. So, and it doesn't guarantee that you'll get another writers. I know actually a couple of people from Selena, I think it was, that still don't have work. So
Yeah,
don't.
I think the main takeaway is the recalibration of what it means to be industry. The fact that
Right.
80+ % of the jobs in the industry are not writer, director, editor. There's a lot of thing that goes into an entire industry, like you said.
Oh yeah. And
Yeah,
80% of the jobs are outside of, actually probably more. It's probably more than 90%, because if you think about it, it's only one writer, one director.
yeah. So
So
probably
it's
ninety-five
probably like
percent.
90 something percent more, or of the jobs in the industry are outside of those two roles. And then also 80% of the jobs in the industry are outside of scripted TV and films and feature
Yeah.
films. So you can get, so for example, the work I did for Vice, that would fall under 80%.
Yeah,
People
there's so
that
much
work.
content out there. There's so much
Yeah,
things out
there's
there.
so
There's nothing.
there's work up there. It's just that people, like, I've been applying for other. It's just that right now I can't commit to full time, unfortunately, because of this other project that I'm finishing. So I'm looking for something else to supplement the stuff that I'm finishing up. But there's plenty of work, except that work usually ends around Thanksgiving
Mhm.
and doesn't restart again until February, unless you find some indie commercial stuff that happens in between then.
Yeah, I like you're taking the reality on the industry and people needing to recalibrate what it is to make it, and the different paths
Yeah,
we can take, and to just get in there, get work, and
right.
then connect, be honest, put out truthful stories, make sure you represent people, represent your culture correct, you don't appropriate all the
Yeah.
good stuff.
Do
I
the
think
best
that
work that you can do.
yeah,
Do what you can.
I think it was a good chat. So I appreciate you having
Thank
coming
you.
on. Everybody go follow her all over the place. And I will be back to say goodbye in 30 seconds. But thank you, everybody that watched. Thank you for everyone.
Bye
Don't forget to
bye.
like,
Thank you.
subscribe, follow us all over the place. Make sure you rate the podcast when you can. And peace out.